Chapter 741. Everyone was dumbfounded, standing there like wooden stakes. The dragon sword formed by the 108,000 sword souls directly shattered Yu Wentian's moving mountain seal. Then, it drowned Yu Wentian's figure. Big brother! Yu Wentian was also stunned, as if his brain had short-circuited. His big brother was the #1 genius in Prince Yu's residence, a stage 4 heaven and earth spirit bridge expert. Even when facing those top dynasty geniuses, it was impossible for him to be crushed like this. What kind of technique is this? So terrifying, the great Yu dynasty's signature emperor-level martial art was actually shattered in an instant. The surrounding geniuses also revealed unconcealable shock in their eyes. Even if Yu Wentian's moving mountain seal was not the strongest move of Prince Yu's seal, its power was definitely at the peak of king-level martial arts, and it could not be broken so easily. The only explanation was that the difference in strength was too great. This person, Zi Donglai, Yun Yang, and the other top dynasty geniuses had deep gazes at this moment, and their faces revealed surprise. Even with their strength, although they still had an absolute advantage against Yu Wentian, it was impossible for them to do it so easily. He's even stronger than before, Prince Xingli from the Celestial Star Dynasty said in a low voice. So what if he's stronger? This Yi Guqin is destined to die. Crown Prince Xinghong's face was also solemn. Yi Guqin's improvement speed was too surprising. Under the gazes of tens of thousands of people, a furious roar suddenly erupted from the place where the 108,000 sword souls filled the air. There was a loud bang. Yu Wentian's figure forcibly broke through the thousands of sword souls and rushed out. At this moment, his hair was disheveled and messy, and there was blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. However, a silver armor appeared on his body, and it was overflowing with colors and emitting a metallic luster. There were extremely strong defensive runes flowing on the surface of the silver armor. This was Yu Wentian's supreme-grade mystical pattern armor, the Sky Silver Armor. Generally speaking, Yu Wentian would not use the Sky Silver Armor, because there were not many people worthy of him using it. The Sky Silver Armor was also one of Yu Wentian's trump cards. It was originally used to deal with Zi Donglai, Gong Mingba, Crown Prince Xinghong, and the other top geniuses. In the end, he was forced to use it now. But what made Yu Wentian's expression even worse? His heavenly silver battle armor was actually covered with crisscrossing sword marks. Many sword souls were rampaging in his body, causing him to cough up blood. Come out! Yu Wentian operated his cultivation technique, and the true qi in his body burst out, forcing the heaven-splitting sword souls out of his body. But at the same time, he coughed up blood again, and his internal organs suffered heavy injuries. Yi Guqin, you've angered me. Yu Wentian's expression was ferocious. He had actually been reduced to such a sorry state in front of more than a dozen dynasties and over 500,000 people. This had never happened before. No one can save you today. Yu Wentian's eyes were bloodshot, his expression stern. No matter what the outcome of today's battle was, he had ultimately suffered a setback at the hands of a prodigy from a low-level dynasty. This was a stain that could not be erased. Seal of Sea Filling. Yu Wentian once again unleashed his ultimate move, and the liquid true qi in his body surged violently within his qi sea. Terrifying true qi surged along his meridians and burst out. In the void, it was as if huge waves surged into the sky, and the sound of surging tides could be heard. Endless true qi transformed into waves that surged into the sky. Amidst this, a seal broke through the waves, carrying a power that seemed to be able to break through everything as it suppressed towards Yi Guqin below. It's the Seal of Sea Filling. The surrounding prodigies were shocked. The power of the Seal of Sea Filling was much stronger than the mountain-moving seal, and it was probably at the edge of an emperor-grade martial art. Immortal Murdering Sword Technique, Immortal Fall. Yi Guqin's expression did not change in the slightest when he saw this. His dark nether heavy sword swept upwards, and a sword light that tore through heaven and earth swept into the sky. Accompanied by the terrifying scene of a group of immortals falling, the void exploded, and the air was torn apart. Boom! A deafening collision sound resounded in all directions. Under everyone's astonished gazes, that sword light split apart the incoming true chi wave, and then fiercely collided with the seal of sea filling. Bang! Like a huge star exploding, violent true chi spread out with a loud bang. The surrounding prodigies were also forced back by the aftershocks. The aftershocks struck Yu Wentian's body. Although he had the silver sky battle armor protecting his body, his internal organs were still shaken. In addition, the heaven-ripping sword soul had pierced his internal organs previously, and now he vomited blood again. On the other hand, Yi Guchen was also forced back, but there were no obvious injuries. In this attack, Yi Guchen actually had the upper hand. Eyes glazed over. Eyes frozen. Unbelievable. The surrounding prodigies looked as if they had seen a ghost. Yu Wentian's strength was not something that the Vermilion Bird Jade could compare to. He could even wrestle with the prodigies of the top dynasties, but now he was continuously at a disadvantage. Could it be that today, this prodigy from a low-level dynasty will really make a comeback and set a record? The surrounding 500,000 spectators all took a deep breath. In the past prodigy battlefield qualifiers, there had never been a record of a low-level dynasty crushing a high-level dynasty. If Yi Guchen really did it today, then it would set a record again. As I said, Sword Master Yi will not be defeated. He will sweep through the various dynasties and sweep away all his enemies. Among the several 100,000 spectators, there were also many natives of the Saint Origin dynasty. At this moment, they all had excited expressions. Damn it. Looking at the changing gazes, Yu Wentian's heart and lungs were about to explode. Yi Guchen was equivalent to stepping on his head. If he was really defeated today, then all of his fame would be Yi Guchen's stepping stone. What's there to be proud of? Can you take my final move? Yu Wentian's expression was cold as he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He executed a secret technique, causing the aura in his body to skyrocket and his true energy to become even more vigorous. Looks like Yu Wentian is going to go all out. Seeing Yu Wentian execute a secret technique, the spectators exclaimed in surprise. To be able to force Yu Wentian to execute a secret technique, Yi Guchen was already very impressive. Yu Wentian formed a seal with his hands as his true energy gathered. A terrifying energy condensed between his hands. Could it be the final move of King Yu's seal? Everyone was shocked as they paid close attention. The final move of King Yu's seal had reached the level of an emperor-class martial art. That Yi Guchen actually acted as if nothing happened. Does he really think that emperor-class martial arts are that easy to receive? Looking at the indifferent Yi Guchen, the surrounding geniuses cursed in their hearts. Outside the arena, Zhu Keiyu, who looked like a crazy woman with disheveled hair, also stared at Yi Guchen with her beautiful eyes. Ha! You can even disregard an emperor-class martial art. Yi Guchen, I want to see you in an even more miserable state than me. Zhu Keiyu said with resentment. However, they didn't know that Yi Guchen had already received many moves that were comparable to emperor-class martial arts. Yang Haotsong's strike of the war god, Xian Hao's regretless sword, and Gu Zun's ultimate move had all reached the level of emperor-class martial arts. As for Yu Wentian's ultimate move, its fluctuations were only SOSO. This move will suppress you. Sky overturning seal. Yu Wentian formed a seal with his hands and raised them above his head. A terrifying power gathered as if a corner of the sky had appeared. Then, Yu Wentian suddenly flipped his hands. It was as if a corner of the sky had turned upside down as a majestic aura came crashing down on Yi Guchen. If he couldn't receive this move, he would most likely lose his life. Even Zi Donglai, Gong Mingba, and the other top geniuses had grave expressions. They might be able to receive this move, but they would have to pay a price and use their trump cards. Yi Guchen looked coldly at the sky as his eyes were instantly swallowed by the color of blood. The Azura sword Dao strengthened his body. Azura tribulation, destruction of heaven and earth. Yi Guchen roared as a pair of 100-meter-long sword wings spread out from his back. However, unlike before, this pair of 100-meter-long sword wings were actually blood-red, as if countless blood-red swords had been combined together. With a sweep of the sword, the blood-red sword light filled the sky and pierced through the sky. Chapter 742. What kind of sword move is that? The various dynasty prodigies gasped and felt their scalps go numb. That sword move gave them goosebumps. Why does it seem different from before? Even those who had seen Yiguchen use the 10,000 god tribulation were surprised. Although Yiguchen used the same move, there seemed to be something different about it. Could it be that he merged the sword Dao into his sword move? Kenpo, who was watching the battle from outside, trembled as he spoke in disbelief. Merging the sword Dao into a sword move seemed simple, but it was impossible to do so without decades of immersion in the sword Dao. However, Yiguchen wasn't just an 18-year-old youth. He had comprehended becoming one with the sword and comprehended the sword Dao. Now, he had merged the sword Dao into his sword move. Saber 9 was inexplicably stunned. The other prodigies might not understand the sword Dao, but they could feel the power of that sword move. Boom! The sword wings on Yiguchen's back flapped as a sword aura that could destroy the heavens gathered at the tip of the sword. At the same time, he used the extremely destructive Shura sword Dao to create this move. Shura tribulation, destruction of heaven and earth. Boom! The blood-colored sword aura seemed to pierce through the heavens. The sword light shattered the seal that Yuan Tian was suppressing with a loud bang. With a crack, the blood-colored sword aura tore through the air and smashed into Yuan Tian's sky silver battle armor, causing cracks to appear all over it. Yuan also felt as if his chest had been trampled by an ancient elephant. He fell from the sky and smashed into the ground with a boom as he spat out blood. The surrounding 500,000 spectators were silent at this moment as they revealed silent expressions of shock. Yuan, a prodigy from a high-tier dynasty who had used the sky-flipping seal, had actually been defeated. On the other side, Yiguchen's figure was also impacted. After all, an emperor-class martial art was very powerful. Yiguchen's body trembled as a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. However, compared to Yuan, who was lying in the pit in a sorry state, he was much, much better. How is this possible? This is absolutely impossible. As for the vermilion bird Jade, who had already been eliminated, it seemed to have lost its 3 souls and 7 spirits as it shook its head non-stop. She had been looking forward to seeing Yiguchen in a sorry state at Yuan Tian's hands. In the end, Yiguchen's current display of strength was like a heavy slap to her face. Big brother. Yuanji's face was pale, and his body was trembling like a little chick. Yuan, who had always been the target of his pursuit, was actually unable to withstand a single blow. The group of sky prides from the Great Yu dynasty were also stunned and in disbelief. Yuan stood up with great difficulty. His chin was covered in blood, and spiderweb-like cracks had appeared on the chest of his sky-silver battle armor. Yuan could not imagine it. If he did not have the protection of the heavenly silver battle armor, even if he was lucky enough to survive, he would probably be in a very miserable state. Frogs at the bottom of a well, aren't you talking about yourselves? Yiguchen's eyes were indifferent. Without any hesitation, he stomped his foot on the ground and charged forward again. Not good. Yuan Tian's expression changed. He was considered to have lost today. I originally only wanted to deal with Yuanji alone, but since your Great Yu dynasty wants to interfere, then I'll eliminate all of you together, Yiguchen said in an icy tone. How dare you? Impudent. The group of sky prides from the Great Yu dynasty were furious, and their faces and necks were red. As the sky prides of a high-tier dynasty, when had they ever suffered such contempt? Yiguchen actually dared to say that he could defeat all of them alone. Ignorant. Yiguchen's lips curled into a cold arc. He raised his hand again, and 108,000 swords suddenly spread out, turning into a green dragon sword that swept forward. Controlling 10,000 swords, he swept through the sky prides of the dynasty. A series of coughing sounds rang out, and those sky prides who were still indignant a moment ago were directly sent flying like sandbags in the next moment. Don't go overboard. Yuan Tian's eyes almost popped out when he saw this scene. In the past, when had a high-tier dynasty's entire team been eliminated? And now, their Great Yu dynasty would be the first to be nailed to the pillar of shame and be ridiculed. You too! Yiguchen's heavy sword swept out, and Yu Wenian tried his best to resist. However, he was already injured by the destruction of heaven and earth and was directly sent flying out of the arena. In the end, only Yu Wenji was left in the entire Great Yu dynasty. Yu Wenji trembled like a chick, and his gaze towards Yiguchen was filled with incomparable fear. Extreme regret spread out from Yu Wenji's heart. If he hadn't offended Yiguchen in the imperial capital's sword battle dojo, today's scene wouldn't have happened. But how could he have known that this sky pride from a low-tier dynasty would actually become so powerful? I admit, Yu Wenji didn't have the slightest bit of battle power and wanted to admit defeat directly. He was only at the life and death threshold, so how could he be Yiguchen's match? However, Yiguchen obviously wouldn't let Yu Wenji off so easily. Boom, boom, boom. After a series of attacks, Yu Wenji's entire body was covered in sword wounds. His bones felt as if they had been crushed, and his cheeks were swollen like a pig's head. Yiguchen swung his heavy sword and sent Yu Wenji flying like a ball. Puchi! Yu Wenji fell headfirst into the ground, his head landing on the ground. Not long after, the entire Great Yu dynasty was eliminated. The surrounding spectators were stunned. Even though there were many chaotic battles and sky prides in the entire arena. But Yiguchen was still very eye-catching and attracted a lot of attention. Is this the so-called sword master, Yiguchen? He does have some skills. Looks like it wasn't just a rumor. It's somewhat true. A high-tier dynasty was directly destroyed by him alone. The surrounding spectators exclaimed. Even the white-robed old man, who was standing high in the sky and hosting the competition, was slightly surprised and said, "Who is this kid? Which top-tier dynasty does he come from?" The white-robed old man didn't know much about the sky prides of these dynasties. He was only temporarily sent to host the competition. After hearing that Yiguchen came from a low-tier dynasty, the white-robed old man was also surprised. Obviously, Yiguchen had attracted a lot of attention. Of course, on the other hand, he immediately became the target of many sky prides in the arena. The sky prides of the Dark Witch dynasty stared coldly at Yiguchen. The sky prides of the Gold Sun dynasty also looked serious. It was obvious that Yiguchen's methods had intimidated them. Perhaps the sky prides of the top-tier dynasties weren't afraid of Yiguchen. But the sky prides of the high-tier dynasties felt extremely threatened. The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. This Yiguchen is probably going to be targeted. Yeah, not only him, but those who follow him will also be in trouble. Some of the spectators could also see that the two empires were faintly gathering and surrounding Yiguchen. Chapter 743. Normally, the prodigies of high-tier dynasties wouldn't team up with others to attack someone. However, the combat power that Yiguchen had displayed had truly shocked them. Yiguchen had single-handedly defeated an entire high-tier dynasty. Even Yu Wenian, who was at the 4th level of the Spirit Bridge of Heaven and Earth and had used a royal-level martial skill, was defeated by Yiguchen. If Yiguchen wanted to, he might be able to attack other high-tier dynasties. At this moment, the Gold Sun dynasty and Dark Witch dynasty surrounded Yiguchen's group. Yiguchen's expression was calm. Su Jianshi, Yan Wushuang, Little Fatty and the others stood behind him. "Yiguchen, your strength is too surprising," Prince Jiaoyi of the Gold Sun dynasty said. He was at the life and death realm and wasn't the strongest prodigy in the Gold Sun dynasty, but he had seen Yiguchen's strength with his own eyes. Can't people from low-tier dynasties keep a low profile? Showing off like this will only lead to you being targeted in the end. On the Dark Witch dynasty's side, Gui Qiluo, who had seen Yiguchen's battle, didn't speak. The one who spoke was the Grand Hierarch of the Dark Witch sect, Gui Chou. His skin was ghastly pale, and his face was painted with all sorts of strange and twisted runes, making him look extremely strange. His cultivation was the same as Yu Wentian's, a 4th-stage spirit bridge of heaven and earth. However, it wasn't his true qi that was eye-catching, but the divine soul aura that was faintly emitted. Specialized in divine soul arts? Yiguchen looked over with an indifferent expression. He had heard that the Dark Witch sect of the Dark Witch dynasty specialized in divine soul arts that could attack the enemy's sea of consciousness. Even those 1 or 2 levels higher wouldn't want to fight against the Dark Witch sect, let alone those at the same cultivation level. Unfortunately, no matter how strong Gui Chao's divine soul was, it couldn't be stronger than Yi Guqin's sea of consciousness. Not to mention, Yi Guqin still had the meteorite demonic soul butterfly, which had transformed into a guardian spiritual item. The Gold Sun Dynasty and Dark Witch Dynasty's people gathered with unfriendly expressions. Attack! Without hesitation, the two high-tier empires immediately attacked. The strongest prodigy of the Golden Sun Dynasty was Prince Yang Lai, who was at the third stage of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth. As soon as he made his move, blazing genuine qi surged out and bombarded Yi Guqin. At the same time, Gui Chou of the Dark Sorcerer Dynasty attacked as well. His body moved like a ghost, and his eyes turned pitch black as his spiritual energy surged out. These two prodigies of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge had joined forces to deal with Yi Guqin. The remaining prodigies of the two dynasties charged towards Su Jianshi and the others. Bullying me with numbers, damn it. Su Jianshi raised her sword and unleashed sword energy. Although she could not use the power of the sword of the human sovereign, her strength was not to be underestimated. In addition, the little fatty was also a weirdo. He didn't have any aura of cultivation, but he seemed to have the divine movement technique. His movements were very fast, and his face was full of cheapness. Once this sword appears, you will undoubtedly die. The little fatty's expression was dignified as he brought out his own sword. What sword is that? The prodigies of the Gold Sun Dynasty and Dark Sorcerer Dynasty had solemn expressions. The sword seemed to emit an aura that even they were wary of. This sword is called my true self. It seeks the true self and cuts through all illusions. Little Fatty's words did not carry a trace of anger. His expression was stern as he pretended to be serious. Unfortunately, the fat on his face was trembling, slightly ruining his temperament. My true sword? The prodigies of the various dynasties were filled with fear as they spoke solemnly. That's right. You're so cheap. The little fatty could no longer hold it in. He burst out laughing and his fat trembled. He was very wicked and often used this move to insult others. Why you're playing with us? The prodigies of the various dynasties instantly flushed red. They were incomparably embarrassed as they chased after the little fatty. Although the little fatty was fat, his body was even more slippery than a fish in the water. It was impossible to catch him. However, even with the little fatty, Su Jianshi, and the others, the prodigies of the Sword Sex Pagoda Forest were still in great danger. Cousin, shouldn't we help cousin? On the Swallow Cloud Dynasty side, Yan Shaoying hesitated and spoke. He naturally didn't want to help Yi Guqin, but he wanted to save Yan Wushuang. However, he wasn't strong enough, so he could only ask Yan Jiuxing to help. Indeed. Yan Jiuxing nodded slightly. However, at this moment, the other prodigies of the Swallow Cloud Dynasty were unhappy. Yan Xiu sneered and said, Big brother, forget it. Yan Wushuang would rather believe Yi Guqin than us. Let her go. That's right. If she had joined us earlier, she wouldn't have been targeted because of Yi Guqin. The other prodigies of the Swallow Cloud Dynasty agreed coldly. Previously, they didn't want Yan Wushuang and the others to be a burden and didn't want her to join them. Now, they were saying that Yan Wushuang didn't want to join them and that she deserved it. Yan Jiuxing frowned. With two high-tier dynasties joining forces, he couldn't save the Sword Sex Pagoda Forest alone. Unless everyone from the Swallow Cloud Dynasty joined forces. However, Yan Xiu and the others weren't willing to help. Just as the Swallow Cloud Dynasty was watching, Yi Guqin was already fighting with Prince Blazing Sun and Gui Chou. Great Blazing Sun technique. Prince Blazing Sun attacked and his true energy surged. His true energy was a different type of true energy that was scarlet red like flames. Soul Curse technique. On the other side, Gui Chou's eyes were pitch black as a pitch black soul power surged out and bombarded Yi Guqin's consciousness. Yi Guqin wasn't afraid at all as he looked at the battle from the corner of his eyes. With two high-tier dynasties attacking from both sides, the Sword Sex Pagoda Forest was in a bad situation. We need to settle this as soon as possible. Yi Guqin was indifferent. 5-element sword field, Yi Guqin didn't want to waste any time and attacked forcefully. His sword intent spread out and formed the 5-element sword field. Various colored sword lights soared into the sky and destroyed Prince Blazing Sun's attack. However, Gui Chao's soul curse technique had already arrived. Yi Guchen didn't react at all and allowed the technique to enter his consciousness. Yi Guchen is finished after taking on Gui Chao's soul curse technique. The Sky Prides couldn't help but cry out when they saw this scene. As for those who were blasted out of the arena by Yi Guchen, such as Zhu Ku, Yu Wenji, and Yu Wenin, they had cold smiles on their faces. The Black Voodoo cult's curse technique is the most difficult to deal with. If it enters Yi Guchen's consciousness, Gui Chou will be able to shatter it with a single thought. Zi Donglai shook his head, thinking that the outcome was already decided. Gui Chou sneered when he saw that his attack had succeeded. Yi Guchen, I'll give you a choice now. Leave the arena and you can avoid the pain of your soul burning, Gui Chou said coldly. Yi Guchen said indifferently, you can give it a try. In that case, don't blame me for being merciless. Gui Chou snorted and formed a hand seal. However, what shocked him was that Yi Guchen stood where he was without any expression on his face. What's going on? Gui Chou formed another hand seal, but Yi Guchen was still unmoved. How can this be? Gui Chao's soul curse technique didn't work? Everyone was astonished. Zhu Ku, Yu Wenin, Yu Wenji, and the others' expressions froze. Their cold smiles froze in place, looking extremely comical. It didn't work? Then it's my turn. Yi Guchen's chaotic sea of consciousness suddenly spun. An incomparably terrifying wave of soul power swept out like a towering wave. At the same time, a bright beam of light was released from the meteorite demonic soul butterfly in his consciousness. Soul Star Beam. That beam of light directly shot towards Gui Chou. Dead Soul Bell. Gui Chao's expression changed drastically as he screamed and summoned his consciousness's protective spiritual item. The Black Voodoo cult specialized in cultivating the soul. As a great cult disciple, he naturally didn't lack protective spiritual items. However, under the bombardment of the astral soul's light beam, this protective spiritual object directly cracked and was destroyed. Boom! The soul star beam slammed into Gui Chao's consciousness. He screamed and fell to the ground, his body twitching. The surroundings were deathly silent. Another prodigy of a high-rank dynasty had been defeated by Yi Guchen. Chapter 744. What's going on? Gui Chou is a prodigy who specializes in the divine soul. How can Yi Guchen suppress Gui Chou in the divine soul aspect? The prodigies of the other dynasties stared at Yi Guchen as if they had seen a ghost. The most eye-catching thing about Yi Guchen was, of course, his swordsmanship. Almost everyone believed that Yi Guchen specialized in the sword Dao. In the martial Dao, one's cultivation level was the most important, but other than that, there were other aspects that focused on. For example, some had a strong physical body, some had a strong divine soul, and some had unparalleled sword Dao. For example, Gu Zun specialized in saber martial arts with powerful destructive power. His offensive power could be said to be unparalleled. However, he was slightly weaker in the divine soul and physical body aspect. It wasn't that he was weak, but he was slightly inferior to those who specialized in the physical body and divine soul in comparison. Similarly, Yi Guchen was famous for his sword. He had comprehended the peerless sword Dao and was one with the sword. Logically speaking, he was already monstrous enough. However, no one expected Yi Guchen to be so monstrous in the divine soul aspect. He had directly crushed Gui Chou, who specialized in the divine soul. No! I don't believe it! Gui Chou's body trembled as he struggled to get up. He hugged his head with both hands. His spiritual sea was about to split open. His face was twisted, but he refused to admit defeat. It would be fine if he lost to a powerful prodigy who specialized in the divine soul. However, Yi Guchen was a sword Dao cultivator. Gui Chou felt humiliated. His divine soul had been wasted, and he began to doubt his life. Seeing that Gui Chou couldn't accept it, Yi Guchen shook his head slightly. Gui Chou could have met anyone, but he just had to meet him, who cultivated the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra. His chaotic spiritual sea alone was enough to crush all spiritual seas of the same level. Not to mention, he also had the meteorite demon soul butterfly as a guardian spirit. Just now, Yiguchen didn't even let the meteorite demon soul butterfly activate the protective light shield. The soul curse directly fell into his chaotic spiritual sea. As a result, his chaotic spiritual sea rotated and destroyed the curse. The benefits of the chaotic soul power were finally revealed. Again! Guicho roared in anger. His sea of consciousness was pushed to the limit as boundless soul force surged out. That dense soul power seemed to have transformed into a gray fog that churned before finally forming a gigantic gray skull. The skull opened its ghastly mouth and tried to swallow Yiguchen. Devil devour! This was Black Voodoo Cult's Emperor-class soul art. Guicho might not be able to unleash its full power, but the ripples of its power were still shocking. Yiguchen raised his eyebrows as his chaotic soul power surged out and enveloped the gray skull. At the same time, the meteorite demonic butterfly once again shot out the star soul light beam. When Yiguchen broke through the primal chaos sea of consciousness, the meteorite demonic soul butterfly evolved again. A third star spot appeared on its wings. This soul star light beam was the meteorite demonic soul butterfly's new soul attack. Rumble! The gray skull was enveloped by the primal chaos soul power and was struck by the astral soul light beam. With a loud bang, it was destroyed. Formless soul power swept out in all directions. Soul-shattering star needle. In Yiguchen's sea of consciousness, the meteorite demonic soul butterfly flapped its wings. The soul power condensed into countless needles that pierced toward Guicho. Ah! Guicho screamed. He couldn't block it at all. His sea of consciousness was about to explode. His head was in intense pain. Blue veins popped out as his temples throbbed. Tears of blood flowed from the corners of his eyes. He fainted. Guicho lost in a soul battle? The surrounding battles seemed to come to a standstill. The prodigies from the Dark Voodoo dynasty were in disbelief. Damn it. On the other side, Prince Yanglai's eyelids twitched as the corner of his mouth twitched. Guicho had been defeated in just a few moves. It's your turn. Yiguchen's eyes were cold. He attacked again without mercy. After losing Guicho, Prince Yanglai was even less of a match for him. After a dozen rounds, Prince Yanglai was sent flying out of the arena. Then Yiguchen, Su Jianshi, and the others blasted all the prodigies from the Golden Sun Dynasty and Dark Voodoo Dynasty out of the arena. The two high-tier dynasties followed in the footsteps of the Great Yu Dynasty and were eliminated. This was unbelievable. The leaders from the high-tier dynasties turned green as their bodies trembled. Where did this monster come from? Is he a prodigy from a low-tier dynasty? Why do I feel like he's as strong as an Overlord faction's prodigy? Some of the prodigies doubted their lives. Were they fighting against an Overlord faction's prodigy? On the Swallow Cloud dynasty's side, the prodigies who had been watching coldly with their arms crossed were embarrassed. Yen Xiu was even more embarrassed. His expression was unnatural. He had just said that the two high-tier dynasties shouldn't be provoked. He thought that Yen Wushuang and the others deserved it. In the end, it did not take long before the two empires were swept away by Yiguchen. In comparison, Yen Xiu's attitude was laughable. Sigh, we should have done something. Yen Jiuxing shook his head and sighed. However, at this moment, another group of people rushed towards the Swallow Cloud King's group in a menacing manner. Oh no, it's the Phoenix Dynasty. The Swallow Cloud Dynasty's prodigies couldn't help but panic when they saw who it was. Yen Xiu's heart skipped a beat as he sensed that something was wrong. Princess Phoenix Dawn didn't do anything. Chapter 745. Yen Xiu was infuriated. There wasn't a single part of his body that wasn't injured. Yen Wushuang and the others watched from the side without any intention of interfering. The little fatty was even more outrageous. He even said, "Brother, wonderful. Please continue with your performance." Yen Xiu was so furious that he vomited blood. No one knew if it was because of Wang Cheng or because he was angry. All the bones in his body felt like they were about to fall apart and were about to be shattered by King City. There were bruises all over his body and blood was flowing out from his nose and mouth. Yan Wushuang and the sky prides of the sword sect didn't show any emotions. Even the kind-hearted Su Jianshi, who had a strong sense of justice, looked like she was watching a show. Yan Xiu was reaping what he sowed. Yan Wushuang and the others were surrounded by two dynasties. It was fine if Yan Xiu and the other sky prides of the Swallow Cloud dynasty didn't help, but they even mocked them. They didn't treat Yan Wushuang as a family. Now that he had tasted the bitter fruit, he wanted Yan Wushuang to help him. How was that possible? Finally, amidst Yan Xiu's shrill and miserable howl, he was fiercely blasted flying by Wang Cheng. His bones were broken as he was thrown out of the arena. The other geniuses of the Swallow Cloud dynasty who had looked on coldly and ridiculed Yi Shiwen were also eliminated. Only Yan Jiuxing, Yan Sheng, Yan Feiling, and a few others were still holding on. Niece. Yan Bailin wanted to say something but stopped. But to be honest, he didn't have the face to ask Yan Wushuang to ask Yi Guchen for help. After all, the Swallow Cloud dynasty didn't treat Yan Wushuang and Yi Guchen well. At this moment, Yan Wushuang hesitated when she saw Yan Jiuxing and the others who were struggling. Yan Jiuxing's character wasn't as bad as Yan Xiu and the others. But she wasn't strong either. She couldn't help but look at Yi Guchen. Looking at Yan Wushuang who was biting her red lips and hesitating, Yi Guchen nodded his head. He wasn't a petty person. Furthermore, Yan Jiuxing was the crown prince. He didn't look down on them like the other sky prides. Humph, as long as I get rid of you, all the geniuses of the Swallow Cloud dynasty will be wiped out. Wang Cheng turned to look at Yan Jiuxing. Yan Jiuxing's strength was not weak, but Wang City had the advantage of numbers. Several heaven and earth spiritual bridge geniuses gathered together to suppress Yan Jiuxing together with Wang City. Sigh. Yan Jiuxing sighed. Their Swallow Cloud dynasty's strength was indeed far too inferior to the Phoenix Nye dynasty. However, Yan Jiuxing would not just sit there and wait for his death. He pointed the sword in his hand at the sky and his aura surged. He was about to perform his ultimate move. It was the emperor-level sword art of the Swallow Cloud dynasty, the Celestial Rise Taoist sword. However, just as Yan Jiuxing was about to fight, a figure dashed over like a gust of wind and lightning. With one kick, he sent a level 1 heaven's pride of heaven and earth flying. Yes, Yi Guchen. Wang Chen and the others' expressions changed slightly. Yi Guchen's expression was indifferent as he said, "Leave." Wang Chen's expression kept changing and he looked slightly embarrassed. When Princess Fengxi invited Yi Guchen, he was the one who resisted the loudest. He looked down on a low-tier Lord Dynasty prodigy like Yi Guchen. However, Yi Guchen's performance was like a slap to his face. No matter how much Wang Chen hated Yi Guchen, he had to admit that Yi Guchen was strong. Our Phoenix Nye dynasty is not like those high-tier lords. Are you sure you want to interfere? Wang Chen said coldly. He could only use Princess Fengxi's name to suppress Yi Guchen. In addition, some of the geniuses in the arena and the hundreds of thousands of spectators outside the arena were also shocked and surprised. Isn't Yi Guchen on good terms with Princess Fengxi? Why is he in conflict with the Phoenix Nye dynasty now? Many people turned to look at Princess Fengxi. Princess Fengxi's expression was calm. After all, she was a level 7 prodigy. Her strength was not something Yu Wentian and the others could compare to. However, Princess Fengxi was a little unhappy in her heart. He's actually willing to attack my Phoenix Nye dynasty for Yan Wushuang. Princess Fengxi's red lips moved slightly as she muttered to herself. She felt a little annoyed and a rare tinge of jealousy. On the other side, the battle had begun once more. Wang Chen didn't like Yi Guchen, so he used his advantage in numbers to attack Yi Guchen once more. However, Yi Guchen was terrifyingly strong. Every time he attacked, a prodigy from the Phoenix Nye dynasty would be sent flying and spit out blood. Is the Phoenix Nye dynasty going to be wiped out by Yi Guchen? Some spectators couldn't help but take a deep breath. Yi Guchen could even wipe out a top-tier Lord dynasty by himself. That was too terrifying. That's not the case. Didn't you see that Princess Fengxi hasn't attacked yet? Someone shook their head. A prodigy from a top-tier Lord dynasty wasn't that easy to deal with. At this moment, Crown Prince Xinghong said coldly, "The few of you, help those from the Phoenix Nye dynasty and eliminate Yiguchen. Crown Prince Xinghong couldn't sit by and watch anymore. Now was the time to eliminate Yiguchen. On the other side, Zi Donglai from the Purple Glory dynasty had also sent out several third-stage and fourth-stage Heaven-Earth spiritual bridge prodigies to attack Yiguchen. Those top-tier lord dynasties are finally attacking. Some people exclaimed. In the past qualifiers, there had never been a case where the top empires worked together to encircle and suppress a single genius. Prodigies from top-tier lord dynasties had their own pride and wouldn't do such a thing. But now, they were attacking Yiguchen at the same time. TSK, no matter what the result is, Yiguchen's name will probably shake the surrounding dozen lord dynasties. Yeah, to be able to make so many top-tier lord dynasties attack him together, he's already extraordinary. Many people sighed. As for Crown Prince Xinghong and Zi Donglai, they didn't attack. Their identities were even more special. If they participated in the attack, they would lose all face and attract criticism and disdain. Outside the arena, Zhu Ke Jade, Yu Wenin, Yu Wenji, and even Yan Xiu were all staring at Yiguchen. If this still couldn't eliminate Yiguchen, then they had to accept it. Wang Chen was overjoyed when he saw that the two top-tier lord dynasties had sent reinforcements. He turned to Yiguchen and smiled sinisterly. Yiguchen, let's see how arrogant you can be. I don't know about the others, but at least you should leave. Yiguchen used wave-like subtle steps and arrived in front of Wang Chen in an instant. The five-element sword domain was unleashed, trapping Wang Chen within it. Then, the Xianming heavy sword fiercely attacked. Even though Wang Chen wasn't weak, how could he be Yiguchen's match? In less than 10 rounds, he was sent flying by Yiguchen. His sternum was shattered and he spat out blood mixed with pieces of his organs. At this time, the Sky Prides of the Sky Star Dynasty and Purple Glory Dynasty also attacked at the same time. In an instant, violent waves spread out in all directions. The air seemed to be boiling and exploding. Yiguchen raised his hand and summoned 108,000 sword souls. They were like a shocking flood that swept out in all directions. Other than a few Sky Prides of the Heaven and Earth Spiritual Bridge, the rest of the small fries were all sent flying. Sky Star Dynasty, I have never offended you, but you have attacked me again and again. Yiguchen looked coldly at a young man. He was Prince Xingxian of the Sky Star Dynasty. Cut the crap. You can only blame yourself for showing off your abilities. Prince Xingxian said coldly. Then the battle broke out again. But what shocked everyone was that Yiguchen was too fierce. Sword souls swept out with every move he made. He even summoned the 5 Emperors' Cosmos sword formation. 5 swords formed a sword formation and slashed at the Sky Prides of the 3 top-tier lord dynasties. After dozens of rounds, Prince Xingxian's face was pale and he spat out blood. His clothes were in a mess as he was sent flying. The Sky Prides of the Purple Glory Dynasty were also sent flying. The Sky Prides of the Phoenix Nye Dynasty were also swept away. Boom! A loud explosion spread out. Yiguchen's 100,000 sword souls swept out in all directions. The 5 swords of the array swept out in all directions. All the Sky Prides that surrounded him were sent flying. In an instant, there was a blank space around Yiguchen. There was no one. The place was dead silent. Hundreds of thousands of people were so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. He had single-handedly swept away the top-tier lord dynasties. Chapter 746. Yiguchen might really set a new record today. Even some of the people from the top dynasties couldn't hide their shock and murmured. This group of people with extraordinary backgrounds always had a natural prejudice against low-level dynasties. However, at this moment, Yiguchen had forcefully shattered their prejudice. Even a lower dynasty could produce a true dragon. Sword Sect Yi is unparalleled. Some of the people from the Saint Origin dynasty were even more excited. Their faces were flushed red as they cheered. This kind of peerless grace that swept through everything made them feel proud. Yiguchen's attack didn't just sweep away everyone, it also indirectly solved the difficult situation of the Swallow Cloud dynasty. Yan Jiuxing sighed and cupped his hands towards Yiguchen. At the same time, he felt a little ashamed. This was because he didn't make a move immediately. In addition, Yen Shouting, Yen Failing, and a few other sky prides were also ashamed. Especially Yen Xiaotang and Yen Failing. They were the first people to come into contact with Yi Guqin. At the beginning, they were high and mighty like the other sky prides and didn't put Yi Guqin in their eyes. After a series of experiences, Yi Guqin had thoroughly taught them how to be a proper person. Although Yen Xiaotang still couldn't ease his relationship with Yi Guqin, he didn't dare to have any thoughts of targeting him. Yen Failing also lowered her head, her face blushing with embarrassment. Don't be happy too early. The real top sky prides haven't made a move yet. There were also some people from the top dynasties who said faintly. The Xinghong Crown Prince, Princess Fengxi, Zi Donglai, Gong Mingba, and the other sky prides hadn't made a move yet. Yi Guqin. Finally, the Xinghong Crown Prince couldn't sit still anymore. Originally, he wanted to rely on his status and let his subordinates and others deal with Yi Guqin. But now, he had no choice but to do it himself. Although he had seen Yi Guqin's strength, the Xinghong Crown Prince was still very confident in himself. Although he was a sky pride from a top dynasty, a large portion of his cultivation techniques and martial arts came from the Starry Sword Pavilion. This was because the retired emperor of the Starry Sword Pavilion was originally an elder of the Starry Sword Pavilion. Crown Prince Xinghong's martial arts virtually obtained that retired emperor's true teachings. To a certain extent, Crown Prince Xinghong could also be considered a disciple of the Starry Sword Pavilion. Is Crown Prince Xinghong finally going to make a move? Seeing Crown Prince Xinghong taking a step toward Yi Guqin, everyone was stunned. They had long guessed that Crown Prince Xinghong would make a move. After all, he had already decided that Princess Phoenix Dawn was going to be Yi Guqin's partner. In the end, she had actually taken a liking to Yi Guqin and had even flirted with him. For a man, the most intolerable thing was to be cuckolded. Zi Donglai was also watching. He didn't want to be the first to deal with Yi Guqin, so he wanted to use the hands of others to probe Yi Guqin's weight. Now, Zi Donglai was slightly shaken by Saber Nine's wager. However, he immediately suppressed this slight hesitation. The Xinghong Crown Prince had an imposing appearance. There was a halo of starlight behind his head, which made him have an otherworldly temperament. He was very powerful and stood out from the masses. Crown Prince Xinghong stepped forward, not concealing his cold hostility. However, Yi Guqin's eyes were also filled with a cold light. He and Crown Prince Xinghong had never met before, but Crown Prince Xinghong had secretly targeted him time and time again. Even a clay figurine would have some anger, let alone Yi Guqin. Your arrogance has come to an end. Crown Prince Xinghong waved his sleeve. Even though Yi Guqin had displayed extraordinary combat strength, he was still arrogant and had the confidence to be invincible. After all, he had a part of the Starry Sword Pavilion's true inheritance, and his strength was definitely not comparable to ordinary top-tier sky prides. Are you ready to pay the price? Yi Guqin held his sword and said coldly. Since Crown Prince Xinghong had made a move against him, Yi Guqin wouldn't hold back. The battle between sky prides was about to start. Both of their auras rose, and they were like two sharp needles against each other. The 500,000 people present were also paying attention. This was the first time a top-tier sky pride had made a move. It was a rare sight. In the previous chaotic battle, no one dared to make a move against Crown Prince Xinghong, Princess Fengxi, Zi Donglai, and the others because they knew that there was no hope. Therefore, many people were looking forward to seeing what kind of strength Crown Prince Xinghong, who had never made a move before, would unleash. And how would Yi Guqin deal with it? Just as the two of them were about to make a move, a faint voice spread in all directions. The first half is over. Everyone stop. The person who spoke was the white-robed supremacy who was hosting the competition. It's actually over. Many people were speechless and looked at the arena at the same time. They realized that more than 1,500 people had been eliminated without them noticing. Only 500 people were left in the arena. What made people even more speechless was that many high-level and top-tier sky prides had been eliminated, and it was obviously Yi Guqin's doing. Sigh, it's a pity that I didn't get to see the battle between the two of them. Everyone sighed and felt discouraged. They were so close to seeing the shocking battle. In the end, it was stopped. Everyone's heart itched. They really wanted to know the battle between Crown Prince Xinghong and Yi Guqin. A top-tier sky pride from a top-tier empire and a dark horse who rose against the trend. Who would be stronger and who would be weaker in the end? Don't be discouraged. If the two of them really have the ability, they will definitely clash to determine the champion in the second half, some people said. In the arena, both Crown Prince Xinghong and Yi Guqin slowly retracted their attacks. You're lucky. Crown Prince Xinghong snorted coldly. He was a little dissatisfied that he didn't eliminate Yi Guqin in the first half. He had miscalculated. Who is the lucky one? Yi Guqin shook his head. At this point, the first half was over. Out of the thousands of sky prides from more than 10 empires, only 500 people were left to participate in the second half of the competition. Congratulations! The remaining 500 people are all qualified to participate in the battle between the sky prides, the white-robed supremacy said loudly. Really? The remaining sky prides were stunned at first. Then they were overjoyed. They were actually qualified to participate in the battle between the sky prides. When the preliminaries are over, you will be issued with the qualification tokens to participate in the battle between the sky prides, the white-robed supremacy said. Supremacy, since we are already qualified, why is there still a second half of the competition? One of the sky prides asked respectfully. The second half will be a ranking competition. It will determine the ranking of this area. The higher the ranking, the more preferential treatment you will receive. You might even be able to enter the eyes of some overlord forces, the supremacy explained. I see. All the sky prides were envious. If they performed well, they would be able to enter the list of those overlord forces. The value of this was even greater than participating in the battle between the sky prides. Even those top-notch sky prides who were calm and collected were tempted. I must get first place. Zi Donglai smiled. He was a 7th-grade sky pride and had extraordinary talent. He was confident that if he entered the overlord forces, he would become a dragon in the sky. Princess Phoenix Dawn's eyes flickered. She also wanted to get a good ranking. Crown Prince Xinghong was even more determined to be the champion. Furthermore, if you are in the top 3, you will be able to receive cultivation techniques and martial arts from the overlord forces. They are all at the emperor level. Furthermore, if you are the champion, you will directly become a reserve disciple of the overlord forces, the white-robed supremacy said again. If you were the champion, you would not only receive generous rewards, but you would also be a reserve disciple. After participating in the battle between the sky prides, you would directly become a disciple of the overlord forces. Chapter 747. Such benefits were hard to reject. Even the elites of the top dynasties would be tempted. Although these top dynasties were rich in resources, they paled in comparison to the overlord forces. The overlord forces had been in the South Sky region for thousands of years and had a strong foundation. These dynasties with a few thousand years of history could not be compared to them. Some dynasties only had a few hundred years of history and had weak foundations. They did not have any resources at all. This was also the reason why these elites wanted to join the overlord forces no matter what. Even Yi Guqin was surprised. They were indeed worthy of being called overlord forces. Even if they were just reserved disciples, they could give away emperor-class cultivation techniques and martial arts. They were simply inhumane. Yi Guqin was also tempted. If he won the championship, wouldn't he be able to join the overlord forces directly? This way, he would have the ability to compete with the Starry Sword Pavilion and the Heavenly God Sword sect. Of course, Yi Guqin was also worried that if the Starry Sword Pavilion appeared in the second half of the ranking competition and made things difficult for him, it would be difficult for him. However, Yi Guqin was not afraid at all. He also had a trump card. The second half of the ranking competition will be held 7 days later. It will also be held here. You can rest and recuperate first. Make sure you are in your best condition. After the white-robed elder finished speaking, he glanced at Yi Guqin before leaving. Some people noticed this and couldn't help but whisper to each other. Looks like Yi Guqin has attracted attention. Yeah, a strong dark horse. He might become the champion and join the overlord forces. It's not that simple. Although he is not weak, the Xinghong Crown Prince and other elites are definitely not just for show. Many people were discussing and looking at Yi Guqin. From the beginning, everyone was not happy about it. Now they were surprised. Yi Guqin was undoubtedly a dark horse that went against the trend. He even showed signs of fighting for the championship. In the finals, I will beat you back to your original state. The Xinghong Crown Prince glanced at Yi Guqin with disdain and said calmly. Yi Guqin didn't say anything. There was no need to speak such nonsense. When the time came, he would use his strength to suppress everything. Tsk, so what if you have a wheel on the back of your head? Why are you pretending to be an angel? Little Fatty's mouth was very cheap as he curled his lips in disdain. The Xinghong Crown Prince's expression froze, and he let out a breath. The wheel of stars behind his head was a manifestation of the primary polarity stellar scripture, a cultivation method of the starry sword pavilion. In the end, Little Fatty called it a broken wheel, causing the corner of Xinghong Crown Prince's eyes to twitch. Birds of a feather flock together. Crown Prince Xinghong left with a sunken face. He didn't want to stay here any longer. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself and would go berserk ahead of time. Now I know what it means to have a battle of words. Chu Qingqi, Ji Ling, and the others were speechless. With Yi Guqin's personality, how could he have such a weird friend? The preliminaries had come to an end. However, the majority of the 500,000 people present did not leave. 7 days later, the finals would be held here. At that time, they might even see people from the overlord forces. At the same time, they were also very curious. Between Yi Guqin and the Xinghong Crown Prince, who exactly would have the last laugh? As for the champion, who would be the winner? This made everyone curious. Even those who had been eliminated earlier, such as Zhu Keiyu, Yuan Tian, Yuan Ji, Yan Xiu, and Wang Chen, were still recovering. They were also healing their injuries while staying here. They were unwilling to accept this and wanted to see Yi Guqin lose. As for those who were even more miserable, such as Crown Prince Yuani, they were brought back to the imperial city by the Yuan master to heal their injuries. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. Yi Guqin and the others were still on the Forbidden City's peak, adjusting their condition to their best state. Meanwhile, in the imperial city, within the Saint Origin dynasty's imperial palace, mournful cries and roars of pain were constantly heard. Yi Guqin, I want you dead. Crown Prince Yuani was lying on the bed, almost like a cripple. All the bones and tendons in his body were broken. There was an alchemist fixing Crown Prince Yuani's bones and veins. Beside him, the Yuan master's face was gloomy and cold. Father, you must help me kill Yi Guqin. Crown Prince Yuani said with a ferocious expression. Son, it's not that I don't want to help you, but if I do, the entire imperial family will suffer the wrath of Feng Manlu and be in danger of being destroyed. The Yuan master sighed, feeling a little helpless. As the ruler of a dynasty, he couldn't avenge his son. Don't sigh, because the imperial family will be destroyed today. Suddenly, a cold and indifferent voice came from outside the palace. Who is it? The Yuan master was furious and suddenly shouted. At the same time, he was shocked. The palace's surroundings were heavily guarded, and there were other divine palace experts guarding the four corners. It was impossible for anyone to infiltrate. What made the Yuan master even more afraid was that the imperial family would be destroyed today. A tall, slender, and beautiful woman walked in from the entrance of the palace. She was wearing a snow-white dress, and her figure was slim and graceful. Her black hair was piled up like clouds, smooth and soft. Her otherworldly appearance was as clear as jade. Her beautiful eyes were clear and cold, without the slightest emotion. She was peerlessly beautiful, like a fairy descending to the world. She was almost flawless. Who are you? How dare you trespass into my palace? The Yuan master stepped out, wearing an imperial robe and a dragon crown. His aura was incomparably oppressive, and the aura of a 9th-level divine palace expert surged out. No matter what, he was still the ruler of a country, and his aura couldn't be underestimated. But the woman opposite him had an extraordinary temperament, and her appearance was so strange that it made people wary. "How dare you?" At this moment, 4 figures flew out from the 4 corners of the palace. These 4 were the only divine palace experts left in the Saint Origin dynasty, and Marquis Huntian was one of them. Although they were berating her, they were also shocked because this woman had quietly entered the palace without them noticing. This woman is... Even Crown Prince Yuani, who was lying on the bed, was stunned. Such a peerless woman was rare. At the same time, Crown Prince Yuani felt that this woman was somewhat familiar, as if he had seen her somewhere before. "You really can't recognize me?" The woman's face was cold, and her jade-like lips curved into a cold smile. "You can call me Hongshan Shui," the woman said coldly. The Yuan master and the others were puzzled, as they didn't know Hongshan Shui's name. Crown Prince Yuani was even more confused. Seeing this, the woman sneered. "Of course, I have another name, a name that I have sealed away for a long time, Situ Hongshui." As the 4 words fell, Situ Hongshui's aura gushed out, and the aura of the divine palace stage uncontrollably spread out. "Situ Hongshui? Situ Hongshui? How is this possible?" Crown Prince Yuani was stunned, and then he was horrified. Back then, it was he who had joined forces with the Murong family and the Blood Listening Tower to destroy the Situ family. Now, the beauty from back then had come for revenge. "Situ Hongshui, you dare to kill your way into the palace alone?" Crown Prince Yuani was nervous, and his voice trembled. He couldn't imagine how Situ Hongshui's cultivation had reached the divine palace stage. It's just a low-level empire. If it's destroyed, then so be it. An old voice sounded from the void, and an old woman in a linen robe appeared, smiling as if she was looking down on ants. It was Grandma Withered Flower. "Sovereign!" Even the Yuan master took several steps back, and his expression changed. Crown Prince Yuani was completely stunned. What kind of terrifying force had Situ Hongshui joined that she had a sovereign following her? "I'll leave them to you." Situ Hongshui slowly walked toward Crown Prince Yuani. Crown Prince Yuani was one of the main culprits. It's just a small matter." Grandma Withered Flower's wrinkled old face revealed a cold smile. "No." Amidst a few screams, the 4 divine palace marquises, including Marquis Huntian, were all killed by Grandma Withered Flower, and blood flowed out of their 7 orifices. The Yuan master's heart meridian was severely injured by Grandma Withered Flower, and his internal organs were shattered. The Yuan master wasn't as strong as Feng Manlu, who could challenge a sovereign. In the end, the Yuan master roared and vomited blood, falling to the ground and dying. No. Don't kill me." Crown Prince Yuani trembled. Although he was crippled, he was still alive. Sush. Situ Hongshui's jade-like fingers streaked across the air, directly cutting off Crown Prince Yuani's head. Not only that, but Situ Hongshui and Grandma Withered Flower killed almost everyone in the palace. Blood flowed like a river, and human lives were treated like grass. An eye for an eye. You destroyed my Situ family that day, and today I'll destroy your palace. Although Situ Hongshui was as beautiful as a fairy, her fairy-like face was cold and emotionless. The 7 despair demon heart made her have no sympathy at all. "Now that everyone has been killed, shouldn't we go find that brat?" Grandma Withered Flower smiled. She knew that taking revenge was just a matter of convenience. Killing Yiguchen was the key to truly cultivating the ultimate heartless Tao. Situ Hongshui's jade-like eyes were deep as she said indifferently, "There's also the Murong family and the Bloodthirsty Tower." Chapter 748. Situ Hongshui and Grandma Withered Flower left the imperial palace that was dyed in blood. The entire imperial palace was silent. Only blood and corpses could be seen everywhere. It was imaginable that the news of the imperial family's destruction would spread in all directions within a few days. The entire Saint Origin dynasty would fall into an unprecedented turmoil. In addition to the changes in the Tianhuang Plains, the dynasty would be turned upside down. In less than half a day, Situ Hongshui and Grandma Withered Flower arrived at the Beichen Manor. They first killed the Beichen Manor's manor lord, who had attacked the Situ family, before arriving at the Murong family. Without any superfluous words, the two of them attacked mercilessly. They massacred the entire Murong family. Wails and screams filled the entire place. The ground was littered with the corpses of the Murong family members. The Murong family has been destroyed. Let's go. Grandma Withered Flower said. Wait, there's one more person. Situ Hongshue's eyes were cold. She spread out her soul power and finally found an empty secret passage. Grandma Withered Flower immediately destroyed all the mechanisms that were blocking the way. Situ Hongshue directly entered the passage. Finally, a secret room appeared and a person appeared. It's actually you, Hongshue. That person was tall and handsome. When he saw Situ Hongshue, he revealed an incomparably shocked expression. This person was Murong Ditian. Before the battle at the Forbidden Violet Summit, Murong Ditian was not at the Limitless Sword sect. He had hidden in the Murong family. This was because he could faintly sense that the secret of the immemorial sword token had been leaked. Someone had their eyes on him. Murong Ditian concealed his identity and returned home. He stayed in the secret room all day long. He was not willing to give up the secret of the immemorial sword token so easily. He wanted to seize the opportunity to investigate it. But just now, Murong Ditian had sensed miserable screams coming from outside. He thought that the person who had stolen the immemorial sword token had appeared. Who would have thought that the person who had appeared in front of him was actually Situ Hongshue, who had almost married him? Murong Ditian. Situ Hongshue's eyes were indifferent and emotionless. Hongshue, it's really you. Where did you go? That Yiguchen took you away. I've always been searching for your whereabouts. Murong Ditian said with a trembling voice. Your every word and action makes me want to vomit. My Situ family was exterminated because we obtained 2 primordial sword tokens. Today, an eye for an eye. Situ Hongshue's jade-like hand flicked out, and a vigorous stream of true qi fiercely shot towards Murong Ditian. No, Hongshue, listen to me. Murong Ditian's expression changed drastically. He used to be the top heaven pride of Beichen Mansion, but now he was lagging behind others, let alone Situ Hongshue, who was at the divine dwelling stage. Situ Hongshue didn't have the slightest interest in speaking with Murong Ditian as she directly smashed him into a bloody pulp with a palm. Finally, Situ Hongshue found a primordial sword token in Murong Di's heaven essence ring. This primordial sword token wasn't taken from the Situ family, but from the Murong family. Of the 2 primordial sword tokens of the Situ family, one was in the royal family, and the other was in the hands of Xinghong Crown Prince. The other one was in Yi Guchen's hands. This primordial sword token must be related to the abnormal situation in the desolate plains. Master also wanted me to investigate it. Situ Hongshue thought as she kept the primordial sword token. The master of the Immortal Valley had asked her to come to the Saint Origin dynasty mainly to investigate the abnormal situation, and also to let her sever all her grudges. Next, Blood Listening Tower. Situ Hongshue muttered. First exterminate the royal family, then the Murong family, and finally Blood Listening Tower. However, it was obviously much more difficult to exterminate Blood Listening Tower than the previous 2. Blood Listening Tower had branches in various prefectures, and they were hidden in the dark. It wasn't easy to find them. However, with Situ Hongshue's strength and Grandma Withered Flower, it was very easy to find Blood Listening Tower. In just one day, several branches of Blood Listening Tower had been exterminated by Situ Hongshue. In the end, she even attracted the Blood Listening Tower's judges and the Broken Sword Elder. The 4 judges who were once at the Spirit Bridge stage had now reached the Divine Dwelling stage. The Broken Sword Elder was also at the 8th level of the Divine Dwelling stage. However, he was still no match for Grandma Withered Flower in the end. Whoosh! In the void, a beautiful black figure moved swiftly. She was dressed in tight black clothes that outlined her alluring curves. Her face was covered with a black veil, revealing only a pair of starry eyes. However, at this moment, his eyes were filled with unprecedented sorrow and fear. Dead, they're all dead. The Blood Judge, Shadow Judge, Demon Judge, and the Deputy House Master are all dead. The masked woman in black was none other than one of the 4 judges of Blood Listening Tower, Judge Yu Li, Can you escape? Sidu Hongshue's clothes fluttered in the wind as she chased after them like a fairy. Grandma Withered Flower followed beside her. Human Immortal Seal. Sidu Hongshue stretched out her hand. Divine light burst out from her flawless hand and turned into a seal. It was as if an immortal figure had appeared. Not good. Yu Li's expression changed. Although she was also a divine dwelling stage expert, Sidu Hongshue had used a true emperor-level martial art. Just as Yu Li was about to die. The melodious sound of a flute drifted over. It was beautiful and sorrowful. Even Sidu Hongshue, who possessed the 7 despair demon heart, trembled. Scenes of the past with Yi Guqin surfaced in her mind, causing her human immortal seal to crumble. It was hard to imagine that a mere flute sound could affect Sidu Hongshue, who was at the divine dwelling stage. Grandma Withered Flower frowned and coldly shouted, Who is it? It's the house master. Hearing this flute sound, Yu Li's eyes revealed the joy of surviving a calamity. A middle-aged man in snow-white clothes floated in the air. His face was handsome and his features were well-defined. There was a hint of melancholy between his brows. He was a rare handsome man. The jade flute was being played and the sound was sorrowful. This person was the house master of the blood-listening house, Shui Yiqing. House master of the blood-listening house. Situ Hongshue's expression froze. I've taken my revenge. It's about time. Shui Yiqing put down the jade flute and smiled. As if he didn't mind that Sidu Hongshue had destroyed the blood-listening house. I don't care who you are. That Grandma Withered Flower stretched out her hand and the battle power of a sovereign erupted. Shui Yiqing's expression was indifferent as he played the flute again. But this time, the flute sound was incomparably sharp and sonorous. It was like a powerful army that could shake mountains and rivers. Puchi! Grandma Withered Flower screamed and vomited blood. She felt as if her internal organs were about to be crushed by sword qi. The flute sound contained sword Dao. Let's go! Grandma Withered Flower's expression changed. She pulled Situ Hongshue and quickly retreated. Shui Yiqing put down the jade flute and watched them leave. Seeing that you came from there, I'll let you go, muttered Shui Yiqing. House master, why did you let them go? Our entire blood-listening house was destroyed. Yu Li's expression was sorrowful. It doesn't matter. It's a faction that was casually established. Moreover, the world is about to change. Shui Yiqing sighed and looked in the direction of the Tianhuang Plains. When the world changes, it will be when Ji Ru Qianxue fully awakens. Chapter 749. Terrifying. This is too terrifying. To think that there's such a terrifying expert in this lowly dynasty. Granny Withered Flower brought Situ Hongshue and fled several thousand miles away before stopping for a moment. Grandma Withered Flower panted with lingering fear as she took out a healing elixir and consumed it. You're a sovereign. Can't you deal with him? Situ Hongshue asked. She was still in a daze because Shui Yiqing's flute music had reminded her of her past with Yi Guqin. I can't see through his strength, but he's definitely much stronger than me. Grandma Withered Flower was still in fear. Fortunately, that person knows where we came from, so he didn't chase after us. Situ Hongshue slightly knitted her brows, but she soon felt relieved. Anyway, the blood-listening tower was almost destroyed. The demon magistrate who led the destruction of the Situ family had also fallen in her hands. She had taken her revenge. Oh, that's right. Since you've already taken your revenge, it's time to sever the final strand of love. Only with the death of that Yi Guqin will your 7 extinction demon heart be completely formed, Grandma Withered Flower warned. I know, Situ Hongshue slightly clenched her fists as she looked into the distance with an indifferent expression. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. One after another, shocking news swept through the entire dynasty like a bomb. Within the imperial palace, blood flowed like a river. Everyone from the imperial family, including the Yuan master, had died. The Beichen mansion and the Murong family were destroyed in a single night. The blood-listening tower that was entrenched in the dark of the Saint Origin dynasty was almost uprooted. Even the vice tower master, the broken sword elder, had died. All of these news had thoroughly shocked the entire dynasty. For a moment, the dynasty was in chaos. Without the imperial family, there was no leader. All the super families and major forces started to take action. Of course, this wouldn't affect the preliminaries of the Forbidden Mountain. However, Yiguchen also heard a series of news. His gaze was deep as he sighed in his heart. "Are you back?" Yiguchen was a little disappointed, and there was a complicated look in his eyes. There was almost no need to think. The destruction of these major forces was almost a sign that Situ Hongxue had succeeded in her revenge. He recalled the time when he had saved Situ Hongxue. The girl who was crying tears of blood swore to take revenge. And now she had done it. Yiguchen had met Situ Hongxue in the Tianhuang Plain. Situ Hongxue could have killed him, but in the end, she couldn't do it. Would Situ Hongxue be able to do it this time? Yiguchen did not know, nor did he want to think about it. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. As the day of the second half of the ranking competition approached, the Forbidden Purple Mountain, which had been silent for several days, became active again. Apart from a small number of prodigies who were eliminated and left in disappointment, most of the remaining people remained here. Of course, the Vermilion Bird Dynasty, the Great Yu Dynasty, the Golden Sun Dynasty, and the Dark Witch Dynasty did not leave even though they had been eliminated by Yiguchen. Vermilion Bird Jade, Yu Wenji, Yu Wenian, Wang Qin, and even the eliminated Yan Xiu were all present. They would not be satisfied until they saw Yiguchen lose. That Yiguchen does have some ability, but as long as he faces the Xinghong Crown Prince and the other top prodigies, he will definitely show his true colors and end up in an even worse state than me. Vermilion Bird Jade's injuries had improved slightly after a few days of recovery. However, there were still patches of charred marks on his skin. They were caused by the heart demon flame of Nirvana, and there were also sword marks left behind. Others like Yu Wenian and Yu Wenji also had many wounds on their bodies like a mark of shame. These days, there were even people mocking them in secret, making Vermilion Bird Jade, Yu Wenian, and the others feel disgusted as if they had eaten a fly. Yiguchen could vaguely feel the hateful gazes of Vermilion Bird Jade and the others. However, he did not care. While waiting, a group of people arrived from afar. It was the white-robed supremacy and the others. Everyone, the second half of the ranking competition is about to begin. The opponents will be decided by drawing lots. After repeated eliminations, the final ranking will be tabulated. The higher the ranking, the more rewards you will receive. As for the treatment of the champion, it has already been mentioned before, the white-robed supremacy said. The eyes of all the prodigies were burning with passion. Obtaining the right to enter the prodigy battlefield was nothing. Fighting for the ranking was the most important. Next, draw lots to find your opponents, the white-robed supremacy said. The 500 prodigies each drew lots. Those who drew the same lot would be their opponents. Yiguchen pray. The Xinghong Crown Prince drew a lot and said coldly. Yiguchen glanced at him indifferently and did not say anything. The atmosphere of the entire stadium became fervent as they looked at the two people who were already at each other's throats before the start of the ranking competition. The eyes of the many spectators were filled with thick anticipation. Needless to say, the Xinghong Crown Prince was naturally the strongest contender for the championship. Yiguchen, on the other hand, used his shocking performance to conquer the crowd and become the biggest dark horse in this preliminary competition. Many people were guessing whether the Xinghong Crown Prince would take the lead in the end or whether Yiguchen would be the dark horse. Both of them had extraordinary strength. It was very likely that they would encounter each other later on. Then, the ranking competition began. The location was on the Forbidden Violet Mountain. There were many arenas on the Forbidden Violet Mountain for people to compete. After every round, the remaining prodigies would be able to step onto the Forbidden Violet Mountain. In the end, the final two people would fight on the peak of the Forbidden Violet Mountain to determine the champion of the preliminary competition. It was equivalent to fighting for the position of an Overlord-level force's disciple. If one could stand out in such a ranking competition and become the champion, there would definitely be Overlord-level forces extending an olive branch to them. Not long after, the first round of battles began. Yi Guqin naturally would not be so coincidental as to meet the Xinghong crown prince. His opponent was a prodigy from the ancient Cloud dynasty. Seeing that his opponent was Yi Guqin, the prodigy's face turned ugly. His cultivation was also at the grand profound martial realm. I admit defeat. The prodigy was helpless. It was not that he did not have the courage, but he did not want to waste his effort. He was simply not a match for Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin was not the only one who won without a fight. For example, the Xinghong crown prince, Princess Phoenix Dawn, Zi Donglai, Gong Mingba, and the other prodigies did not have the courage to fight and directly surrendered. In the second round, Yi Guqin met a prodigy with the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. The result was no surprise. As for the sword sex Ta Lin and the others, they were all eliminated in the next 3 or 4 rounds. But to them, this was a form of training, so they did not care. After 4 rounds, there were only 30 prodigies left on the Forbidden Violet Mountain. On Yi Guqin's side, apart from him, Su Jianshi was still there. What was surprising was that little fatty was also there. Then, the 5th round began. Yi Guqin drew lots. At the same time, among the 30 prodigies, one of them looked at Yi Guqin with a wild and domineering gaze. Yi Guqin, it seems like your luck is over. Chapter 750. The one who spoke was an extremely muscular youth. His muscles were bulging like lumps of metal, and he had tattoos of various wild beasts. His eyes were like those of a wild beast. His pupils were vertical and exuded an extremely ferocious and wild aura. He was the top genius of the Wanshou Empire, Gong Mingba, who was known as the Beast King. Yi Guqin actually encountered Gong Mingba. Everyone's gazes turned to look at him. Yi Guqin's strength was needless to say. He had swept through all the geniuses of the high-tier empires and was known as the strongest dark horse. As for Gong Mingba, he was also one of the favorites to win the championship. Since the beginning of the preliminaries, this was the first time Yi Guqin had clashed with a top genius. TSKSK, this battle is disadvantageous for Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin is a sword cultivator, and sword cultivators are known for their extreme attacks. Gong Mingba, on the other hand, specializes in the physical body. His strength and defense are boundless, which is the perfect counter for a sword cultivator. Some of the more experienced warriors were also trying to figure it out. To a certain extent, sword cultivators were the same as assassins. Their attacks were strong, but their physical strength and defense were not very strong. As for Gong Mingba, he was almost equivalent to a meat shield. Not only that, but his strength was also very strong, which was the perfect counter for Yi Guqin. Looks like Yi Guqin's luck isn't very good. On the other side, Zi Donglai shook his head and laughed. If Yi Guqin was eliminated, he would naturally win the bet with Kenpo. Yi Guqin, I hope you don't get eliminated. Otherwise, how can I torture you? Xinghong Crown Prince's lips curled into a cold smile. Although Yi Guqin's strength was obvious, this battle was really disadvantageous for Yi Guqin. Most people who had not seen the battle at the Forbidden City Summit did not have high hopes for Yi Guqin. The heavens are taking revenge for us. Zhu Ku, Yuan Tian, and the others were overjoyed. The heavenly Tao had its own cycle of reincarnation. Who would have thought that it would be Yi Guqin's turn to suffer so soon? However, those who were familiar with Yi Guqin had strange looks in their eyes. Don't they know that junior brother Ye's body is also quite strong? Ji Ling curled her rosy lips. He's pretty strong. No, he should be extremely strong. Chu Qingqi rubbed his nose and found it a little funny. Although Yi Guqin was a sword cultivator, it would be a huge mistake to think that he was only a sword cultivator. Anyone who had witnessed the sword and saber duel would know that Yi Guqin's physical body was absolutely extraordinary. Yi Guqin and Gong Mingba stepped onto the stage. You actually have the courage to step onto the stage? Gong Mingba tilted his head slightly, his tone cold. He was 9 feet tall, and his muscles were bulging like a small giant. He cast a large shadow, and his aura was extremely oppressive. Who else can make me retreat without a fight? Yi Guqin said with an indifferent expression. What a joke. Yi Guqin, If you think that I'm the same as those trash, then you're gravely mistaken. Whether or not you can break through my physical defense is another matter altogether. Gong Mingba raised his head and laughed, his voice like thunder. When these words came out, the faces of Zhu Keiyu, Yu Wenyan, Wang Chen, and the others turned as black as the bottom of a pot. It was one thing to lose miserably, but now they were being mocked and used as a negative example. In my eyes, there's no difference, Yiguchen said, holding the Xianming heavy sword. You're not strong enough, but you talk big. I'll stand here and let you attack. Gong Mingba snorted coldly, and the aura of a fifth-stage spiritual bridge of heaven and earth surged out. His muscles were as hard as metal, shining with a hard luster. Yiguchen didn't say anything else, and swept out with the Xianming heavy sword. With a boom, the blunt edge of the Xianming heavy sword struck Gong Mingba's body. Gong Mingba's skin abruptly glowed with a metallic luster, directly blocking the sword. Interesting. Yiguchen was slightly surprised. He just casually swung his sword, wanting to measure Gong Mingba's strength. He didn't expect that Gong Mingba would really block it. It was like a mountain. As for Gong Mingba, although he didn't show any abnormalities on the surface, his heart was secretly shocked. How can Yiguchen's strength be so great? He's a sword cultivator. Gong Mingba was also surprised. The strength of Yiguchen's sword was comparable to a cultivator who specialized in cultivating his physical body. But this should be his full strength. Although it's unexpected, it's still within an acceptable range, Gong Mingba said in his heart. Seeing that Yiguchen's sword couldn't even shake Gong Mingba, the crowd was shocked. The crowd was in an uproar. Gong Mingba is too powerful. He actually blocked Yiguchen's sword just like that. As expected, Yiguchen might be able to sweep through the geniuses of the high-tier dynasties, but when facing a top-tier genius, his true colors are revealed. Many people shook their heads in disappointment. After all, everyone wanted to see a dark horse counterattack. But from the current situation, it seemed like Yiguchen could only stop here. As expected. The Xinghong crown prince, Zidonglai, and the others all shook their heads, thinking that it was reasonable. Dark horse? What dark horse? Gong Mingba's voice was muffled as his aura surged in all directions. He was like an unmoving iron tower. Yiguchen's heavy sword swept out again. But this time, he had the dracophant energy of his perfect physical body and the flawless Vajra body. The Xianming heavy sword streaked across the void, letting out an ear-piercing screech. It's useless, Yiguchen. That's all you've got. Gong Mingba didn't care as he formed a seal with his hands, and a layer of metallic luster appeared on his body. He was very curious. If he couldn't even move Yiguchen, then how embarrassed would Yiguchen be? But boom! When the Xianming heavy sword landed on Gong Mingba's chest, Gong Mingba's disdainful expression instantly changed as the muscles on his face twisted crazily. Bang! An extremely muffled explosion rang out, as if metal had been destroyed. But under everyone's dumbfounded gazes, Gong Mingba's body was sent flying like a heavy sandbag, leaving a long trail behind him. Gong Mingba's chest shook as a deep bruise appeared. His sternum cracked as he spat out a mouthful of blood. The atmosphere instantly became deathly silent. Even the intense battles in the surrounding arenas couldn't attract the attention of the spectators. Hundreds of thousands of pairs of eyes fell on Yiguchen in unison. A sword cultivator had suppressed Gong Mingba, who specialized in physical body cultivation, in terms of physical strength. Everyone was dumbfounded as their minds went blank. The Xinghong crown prince's face sank. This was a scene that no one had expected. Yiguchen! An earth-shattering roar came out from Gong Mingba's mouth. He stood up and a savage aura burst out from his body. His beast-like eyes stared at Yiguchen like a hungry wolf. Obviously, Gong Mingba thought that Yiguchen was playing with him. Chapter 751. Gong Mingba couldn't accept this. As a prodigy of a top dynasty, he had never been humiliated like this before. Beast King Fist. Gong Mingba attacked with all his strength and no longer held back. Blood-colored true qi surged out of his body. The true qi was extremely explosive and as dense as blood. It even formed the shapes of various beasts. It's the 10,000 beast true qi of the Wanshou dynasty. Some of the spectators exclaimed. 10,000 beast true qi was a unique true qi of the Wanshou dynasty. It condensed the power of 10,000 beasts and merged it with true qi. Coupled with the Wanshou dynasty's supreme king martial art, the Beast King Fist. The power of this fist was earth-shattering. As Gong Ming Ba punched out, the air screamed violently. The fist carried countless beast phantoms as it rushed towards Yi Guchen with the intention of destroying everything. Yi Guchen didn't dodge. His physical strength surged as he held the Xianming heavy sword and clashed with Gong Ming Ba. Yi Guchen isn't dodging? All of the spectators were astonished, finding this somewhat inconceivable. Gong Ming Ba's full strength was terrifying. Even the Xinghong Crown Prince and Zi Donglai didn't dare to take it head-on. But Yi Guchen did. Boom! A violent shockwave exploded and swept across the arena. The two figures retreated at the same time. Yi Guchen's wrist shook as he removed the rebounding force. On the other hand, Gong Ming Ba staggered back a few steps, leaving a hole in the ground with each step. This time, they were actually evenly matched. How can this be? The spectators were all shaken to the core. Gong Ming Ba's strong point was Yi Guchen's weak point, but it was still a draw. You also cultivate the physical body? Gong Ming Ba clenched his fists as his eyes flashed with a cold light. Yi Guchen didn't say anything. Although he mainly cultivated the physical body, his physical body and divine soul weren't weak. His physical body had passed the physical body blood tribulation and reached the perfect physical body. Then he used the tendon-changing scripture and the marrow-cleansing scripture to cultivate the diamond indestructible body. After that, he obtained the inheritance of the ancient god and cultivated the body of the ancient god. To a certain extent, he could indeed be considered a physical martial artist. However, what consumed Yi Guchen the most was the convenient cultivation of the sword Dao. Therefore, Yi Guchen answered truthfully, physical body cultivation is just a side job. I don't specialize in it. It would have been better if he hadn't said this. Once he did, Gong Ming Ba's face turned red and he felt like vomiting blood. A martial artist who also cultivated the physical body was actually able to fight to a draw with him, a proud son of heaven who specialized in cultivating the physical body. The onlookers were also speechless. Was there really such a blow? As for Gui Chou of the Dark Shaman dynasty, he was even more stunned. His head buzzed and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. In the first half, he had been crushed by Yi Guchen's soul techniques. He had thought that Yi Guchen also focused on his soul apart from his sword Dao. But now, even his physical body had been cultivated to such a level? Gui Chou almost fainted. Was there a need to be such a huge gap between people? It seems that Brother Yi has also defeated that forging genius, Duanmu Yu, in the path of forging. Even Kempo was speechless. Yi Guchen's talent was simply bullying others. Impossible. Who can beat me in terms of physical body? Gong Ming Ba went berserk. His eyes shone with ambition and madness. On the surface of his body, countless demonic beast runes coiled around him. Myriad Beast King body. Gong Ming Ba roared. His body grew taller and he really became a small giant. His fist was like a stone bowl, and it bombarded Yi Guchen. The air trembled as balls of air blasted towards Yi Guchen. Great Void Sword Wave. Yi Guchen also activated his physical strength. He waved the Xianming heavy sword, and the sword resonated with the void. An endless sword wave burst forth as he fought with Gong Ming Ba. Gong Ming Ba was like a mad beast. Every move he made caused the ground to crack, and gravel flew everywhere. On the other hand, Yi Guchen's attacks were fierce, and he had no intention of dodging. Waves of air blasted out, spreading in all directions. Yi Guchen was not at a disadvantage in terms of physical strength. That Yi Guchen, Xinghong Crown Prince, Zi Donglai, and the others had already finished their battle. At this moment, they were staring at Yi Guchen. No matter how much they looked down on Yi Guchen, they had to admit that Yi Guchen was a threat to them. Boom. After another exchange, the two were both pushed back. Gong Ming Ba's face sank. This sword cultivator that he looked down on, and even thought that he was a natural counter to. The power that exploded out at this moment made him tremble in fear. I, Gong Ming-ba, have indeed underestimated you. But in terms of physical strength, I believe that I am still invincible. As Gong Ming-ba's words fell, the blood in his body shook. His muscles wriggled, and a bloody aura rose from the surface of his body. It turned into various shapes of lions, tigers, dragons, elephants, apes, and other beasts. Looks like Gong Ming-ba is going to use his trump card. The crowd watched nervously. 10,000 beast savagery scripture. Gong Ming-ba's roar was like the howls of thousands of wild beasts. His blood and chi surged out like a tide of blood, sweeping out in all directions. Kill! Gong Ming-ba stomped on the ground, and his entire body appeared in front of Yi Guqin in an instant. It was hard to imagine that his body was like a giant, but his speed was so fast. Heavens, it's the emperor-level cultivation technique of the 10,000 Beast Dynasty, the 10,000 Beast Savagery Scripture. I heard that this scripture can borrow the power of 10,000 beasts. Some of the geniuses had heard of it, and they were shocked. Borrowing the power of 10,000 beasts, how powerful was that? It was equivalent to combining the ferocity of a lion, the killing intent of a tiger, and the strength of an elephant. Tiger form fist. Gong Ming-ba attacked, and his blood surged, as if he had turned into a roaring tiger. Yi Guqin used his heavy sword to block the attack, but he could still feel a powerful force passing through the heavy sword and hitting his body. Lion form fist. Gong Ming-ba's fist changed into the ferocity of a lion. He was as fierce as a heavenly lion, and he wanted to tear Yi Guqin to pieces. Yi Guqin used wave-like subtle steps, and his strength was pushed to the limit as he clashed with Gong Ming-ba. Dragon form fist. Gong Ming-ba leaped into the air like a dragon, and then swooped down, his strength increasing exponentially. Boom! Yi Guqin's body was pushed back, and a deep mark was plowed in his path. Yi Guqin is finally suppressed. Some people sighed. At first, no one would have thought that Gong Ming-ba would have to use his trump card to suppress Yi Guqin. But was that really the case? Yi Guqin, use your sword Dao, or you won't be able to win this battle. After using the 10,000 Beast Savagery scripture, Gong Ming-ba's strength was terrifying, and his confidence was greatly boosted. Oh, is that so? Yi Guqin's eyes were deep. Actually, he could use his sword Dao, but Yi Guqin also wanted to use Gong Ming-ba to measure his physical cultivation. But now, it was time to decide the victor. Ancient God technique. Yi Guqin's mind moved, and a terrifying physical strength erupted like a volcano. His body instantly grew to 9 feet tall, and his body was well proportioned. Ancient light patterns appeared on the surface of Yi Guqin's body. A bright star mark appeared between his eyebrows, and it contained a mysterious ancient power. An ancient and sacred aura was emitted from his body. He was like a god with the sun and moon above his head, and his feet on the earth. Chapter 752. Ancient God Form. This was the form Yi Guqin used to display his peak physical strength. Yi Guqin, who had transformed into a 1-star ancient god, had his physical strength increase by 5 times. Yi Guqin put away the Xianming heavy sword and clenched his fist. The air was torn apart and emitted a shrill sound. Now let's try again. Yi Guqin's body was covered in ancient god light runes as he spoke again. Gong Ming-ba's face froze. Even if he didn't try to sense it, he could feel that Yi Guqin's physical strength had increased by several times. It was even stronger than Gong Ming-ba's. What kind of cultivation technique is this? Or is it a secret technique? Gong Ming-ba's eyes widened in disbelief. The ancient god clan was one of the 100 clans of the myriad heavens. Even overlord forces didn't know much about the 100 clans of the myriad heavens, let alone the people of the dynasties. Even the hundreds of thousands of spectating martial artists were confused. However, the only thing they knew was that Yi Guqin's physical strength was extremely strong, terrifyingly strong. I don't believe it. I definitely don't believe it. Gong Ming-ba went berserk. He charged forward like a beast in human form. The 10,000 beasts true chi and the 10,000 beasts savage scripture were pushed to the extreme. Yi Guchen stomped on the ground with one foot, and the entire arena shook. Cracks spread out in all directions. He punched out, and it collided with Gong Mingba's fist. However, after this exchange of fists, Gong Mingba's face instantly twisted and turned pale. He could only feel an incomparably huge force spreading from the tip of the fist, directly destroying the bones in his fingers and causing the bones in his entire arm to crack. Ah! With a miserable cry, Gong Mingba's entire arm was shattered. It hung limply. One punch. One of Gong Mingba's arms was crippled. There was dead silence, and no sound could be heard. It was as if someone had blocked their throat. Again! Gong Mingba's eyes were bloodshot as he poured his blood into his crippled arm. It had to be said that Gong Mingba's physical body was indeed powerful. It wouldn't take long for this arm to recover. However, Yi Guchen would not give Gong Mingba this opportunity. He raised his hand and clenched it toward the void. The ancient god's star between his eyebrows shone brightly. Suddenly, the mysterious power of the stars in the sky came from the void and condensed into a golden battle spear in his hand. Spear of the ancient gods! Yi Guchen shouted and threw the golden spear. The sharp spear tore through the air and pierced towards Gong Mingba. The ancient god spear was a martial art of the ancient god clan. Heavenly Eyes King had used this move when he was suppressing the chaotic world demonic ape. When Tiantong King imparted the 4-star ancient god technique to Yi Guchen, he included the martial arts of the ancient god tribe. Not only the ancient god spear, but there was also the 5 elements world suppressing fist, ancient god king seal, ancient god immovable king armor, ancient Tao god seal, god's hand, and so on. With Yi Guchen's abilities as a 1-star ancient god, he could only use the ancient god spear. As for the other powerful martial arts of the ancient god tribe, Yi Guchen could only use them when he reached 2-star, 3-star, or 4-star. Besides, Yi Guchen also had the Eye of the Void. However, it wasn't a martial art of the ancient god tribe, but a treasure. To a certain extent, it could be treated as a gifted ability. With Yi Guchen's abilities, even if he used the ancient god spear, its power would not be comparable to Tiantong King's. However, in the spiritual bridge realm of heaven and earth, it was a powerful weapon. Oh no! Gong Mingba's expression changed. He felt a great threat from the ancient god spear. Wild bone armor. Gong Mingba's body glowed, and a set of white bone armor appeared on his body. Even so, the ancient god spear still pierced through. The spear broke through the wild bone armor and pierced deeply into Gong Mingba's body. It brought his body out of the arena and nailed him to the mountain in the distance with a loud boom. Everyone was silent as they watched this scene. They couldn't say a word. A top-tier dynasty's genius had been nailed to the mountain in such a wretched manner. This was too shocking. Yi Guchen withdrew his ancient god form and his body returned to normal. He was tall and skinny and he looked powerless. However, no one dared to underestimate Yi Guchen's physical abilities anymore. After all, even a top-tier genius like Gong Mingba, who specialized in physical strength, was defeated by Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen! The surrounding martial artists cheered. After defeating Gong Mingba, Yi Guchen had established himself as a dark horse and had the ability to fight for the championship. Humph! Crown Prince Xing Hong, Zidonglai, and the other geniuses' faces froze. If they still dared to underestimate Yi Guchen, they would be fools. Let's see who will have the last laugh, Crown Prince Xing Hong said coldly. As for Zhu Ku, Yu Wenin, and the others who wanted to see Yi Guchen make a fool of themselves, their bodies trembled and their faces turned purple. At this moment, their throats seemed to be blocked, and they couldn't utter a single word. Yi Guchen's strength made them give up completely. Yi Guchen wins! The referee shouted. The white-robed honored master, who was standing tall in the sky, looked deeply at Yi Guchen. This kid's luck is extraordinary, the white-robed supremacy thought to himself. He could see that Yi Guchen was extraordinary, but he didn't recognize the inheritance of the ancient god clan. In the next round, Yi Guchen met another heaven and earth spiritual bridge expert and defeated him easily. Su Jianshi was eliminated. Her strength was at the life and death realm. Of course, if she used the power of the human sovereign sword, Yiguchen wouldn't be able to deal with her. However, Su Jianshi wouldn't use the power of the human sovereign sword for a mere ranking. Little Fatty was also eliminated. What was worth noting was that Princess Phoenix she was matched against Zi Donglai in this round. Both of them were grade 7 prodigies with extraordinary means. What surprised everyone was that Zi Donglai was eliminated by Princess Phoenix she. It wasn't that Zi Donglai wasn't strong, but that Princess Phoenix she was too strong. That's the immortal Phoenix blood? Yiguchen was also paying attention. It had to be said that Zi Donglai's connate purple chi was indeed not weak. The last move, purple chi 3,000 miles from the east, was extremely powerful. Even if Yiguchen wanted to take it, he would have to put in some effort. However, Princess Phoenix she possessed the immortal Phoenix blood. Any injury could be healed quickly, and she could even use a powerful Phoenix flame. Seeing that Yiguchen was paying attention to her, Princess Feng she looked over and smiled sweetly. "Huh, young Master Yi, am I powerful?" Yiguchen was silent. What's there to be proud of?" Su Jianshi pouted. As time passed, only 4 of the 30 geniuses were left. Xinghong Crown Prince, Princess Phoenix she, Yiguchen, and another prodigy from a top-tier dynasty. The next draw was Yiguchen against Princess Phoenix she. Sigh, the situation isn't looking good for Yiguchen. Some cultivators sighed. They were only one step away from the final battle. However, Xinghong Crown Prince's opponent was clearly much weaker than Princess Phoenix she. This way, even if Yiguchen won in the end, he wouldn't have much strength left against Xinghong Crown Prince. "Yiguchen, I'll let Phoenix she deal with you first." Xinghong Crown Prince revealed a smug smile. Yiguchen didn't care as he stepped onto the stage and faced off against Princess Phoenix she. The phoenix mark between Princess Phoenix she's snow-white eyebrows was as bright as fire. It gave Princess Phoenix she a noble and mysterious charm. "Let's fight." Yiguchen flipped his dark nether heavy sword and said indifferently, "Young Master Yi, if Phoenix she goes all out against you, you won't have much strength left even if you win." Princess Phoenix she's eyes flickered. "That might not be the case," Yiguchen said. "Is that so? Then." Princess Phoenix she twisted her waist and appeared in front of Yiguchen. She placed her hand on Yiguchen's shoulder and her sleeve slipped down, revealing her snow-white arm. She moved her red lips close to Yiguchen's ear and bit her lip. "Yiguchen, I've seen you fight before and know that you're very powerful. I won't be able to take it, so, can I admit defeat?" Chapter 753. Princess Phoenix Dawn leaned close to Yiguchen. The fragrance of her body wafted into his nose and her words drifted into his ears. Princess Phoenix Dawn had admitted defeat. Yiguchen raised his brows in surprise. He couldn't figure out what Princess Phoenix Dawn was thinking. All the surrounding onlookers were also stunned and confused. Princess Phoenix Dawn had already reached the top 4, but she had admitted defeat. The Xinghong Crown Prince's face was ashen. He was hoping that Princess Phoenix Dawn would exhaust Yiguchen's strength, but not only did she admit defeat, she even leaned so close to him. What a despicable woman! Su Jianshi ground her teeth and clenched her fists. Yan Wushuang bit her lips as she felt even more uncomfortable. "Thank you." Yiguchen nodded. Although he knew that Princess Phoenix Dawn was using him, he still thanked her. "Hee, I'm looking forward to seeing how you defeat the Xinghong Crown Prince." Princess Phoenix Dawn rolled her eyes at Yiguchen and walked down the stage. On the other side, as expected, the Xinghong Crown Prince defeated his opponent. For a moment, the chaotic scene quietened down. After going through layers and layers of selections, the final 2 contenders for the championship of over 10 empires emerged. The Xinghong Crown Prince, Yiguchen. Among them, the one that surprised everyone was none other than Yiguchen. A dark horse that rose from a low-ranked dynasty had swept through a high-ranked dynasty. He had crushed all the top prodigies in the ranking competition. He had obtained the qualifications to fight for the championship in a dominating manner. This had never happened in the qualifiers of the prodigy battlefield. This was because the resources and cultivation environment that the top prodigies received were much better than the low-rank dynasties. To put it bluntly, Even the average prodigies in the top dynasties were stronger than the prodigies in the low-rank dynasties. It was because of this that Yi Guqin's appearance attracted everyone's attention. Could it be that our guess is going to come true? Will Sword Sect Yi really become the champion today and sweep the world with his sword? Some of the local cultivators of the Saint Origin dynasty clenched their fists tightly, their eyes filled with excitement. Yi Guqin had already become a legend of sword cultivation in the dynasty. If he could become the champion again today, he would create a miracle. Perhaps in the South Horizon region, Yi Guqin's name would begin to spread. Next, let the battle for the championship begin. The white-robed reverend said in the sky. Yi Guqin stepped onto the arena at the top of the Forbidden City. After a long journey, he had finally reached this step. Just one more step and Yi Guqin would be able to win the championship. With just one more step, he would be qualified to join an overlord-level force. If he took another step forward, he would have the background to contend with Gu Xiaoyang and Di Haotian. Therefore, Yi Guqin had to win this battle. Dong. Yi Guqin stomped hard on the ground with every step he took, making a dull thud. He knew that although the Xinghong Crown Prince's character was inferior, his strength was unquestionable to be able to reach this step. In addition, the Sky Star dynasty had the backing of the Starry Sword Pavilion. The Xinghong Crown Prince's strength and methods were definitely not something that the other top dynasties could compare to. The hearts of the spectators were in their throats. Today, would the Xinghong Crown Prince create an undefeated legend in a top dynasty? Or would Yi Guqin rise from the grass and soar into the 9 heavens? Everything depended on this battle. Xinghong Crown Prince, you must win. Zi Donglai's face froze. He never thought that he would be eliminated by Princess Feng Shi. His only hope now was for the Xinghong Crown Prince to win. Otherwise, he would lose half of his talent to Kenpo. Brother Yi, if you win this time, I'm afraid that the Sword Dynasty's Sword Dao Alliance will also know about you. Kenpo sighed in his heart. In addition, Su Jianshi, Yan Wushuang, Little Fatty and the others were also watching. Princess Feng Shi was also watching. Finally, the two stepped onto the stage. The Xinghong Crown Prince had a stalwart figure and wore a starry robe. The starry will behind his head was like a star that emitted endless starlight. His cultivation technique inheritance came from the Grand Emperor of the Heavenly Star Dynasty, who was also an elder of the Starry Sword Pavilion. Therefore, the Xinghong Crown Prince could be considered half a disciple of the Starry Sword Pavilion. Because of this, his strength was not something that Zi Donglai, Gong Mingba and the others could compare to. Yi Guqin's face was grave as he pointed the Xianming heavy sword at the ground. Yi Guqin, if you treat me like a prodigy like Gong Mingba, I'm afraid that you'll die a miserable death. The Xinghong Crown Prince said in a deep voice. I'm not looking down on you, although you are indeed a small fry, Yi Guqin said indifferently. The surrounding crowd fell silent. Only Yi Guqin would dare to speak to the Xinghong Crown Prince so directly. Do you only know how to talk? Don't think that you can be arrogant just because you defeated Gu Zun. The Xinghong Crown Prince's aura rose as the strength of a level 6 spiritual bridge of heaven and earth erupted. Are not as good as him. Yi Guqin also unleashed the strength of his great hidden gate cultivation. For a moment, the Forbidden City's peak was turbulent as the sky changed color. You're courting death. Let me shatter your sword sect's name. The Xinghong Crown Prince did not say anything else. He took a step forward and rushed out. He raised his hand and blasted out. Vigorous true qi condensed in his palm. The Xinghong Crown Prince cultivated the Starry Sword Pavilion's mid-grade cultivation technique, the primary pole constellation scripture. Therefore, his true qi was refined by the primary pole constellation scripture and turned into a heterogeneous true qi. A gust of silver true qi burst out from his palm and turned into a spreading nebula. Nebula palm. The Xinghong Crown Prince blasted out a palm that seemed to turn into a galaxy and attacked Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin also gathered the golden true qi in his body and infused it into the Xianming heavy sword. Celestial slaying sword technique. Celestial extinction. The ferocious sword was accompanied by a sharp sword radiance. It tore the air in front of it and collided with the Xinghong Crown Prince's move. The star True Chi collided with the golden True Chi and exploded with countless crackling sounds like sparks. There was a loud bang and a ring of airwaves exploded on the Forbidden City's peak. The two of them were entangled in a battle in an instant, and the shockwaves were extremely intense. The Xinghong Crown Prince's palm was vigorous. Every palm he blasted out was like a galaxy. Yi Guqin performed the celestial slaying sword technique. The sword radiance swept out and it seemed to show the scene of a group of immortals falling. Nebula Chain. The Xinghong Crown Prince performed a special martial art again. He blasted out a palm and vigorous silver star True Chi burst out and condensed into silver True Chi chains. In an instant, Yi Guqin's left hand and left leg were bound. That's the Starry Sword Pavilion's martial art technique. Some of the sky prides in the surroundings exclaimed. The Starry Sword Pavilion's martial art was exquisite and far surpassed the martial arts of these top dynasties. Yi Guqin is at a disadvantage now. The surrounding crowd watched intently. The Xinghong Crown Prince revealed a cold smile. He stomped on the ground and his figure flashed up and appeared in front of Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin's left hand and left leg were bound and it was difficult for him to break free. Die! The Xinghong Crown Prince's vast palm struck toward Yi Guqin's head. He actually wanted to kill Yi Guqin directly. Chapter 754. Feeling the powerful palm wind that assaulted him, Yi Guqin's expression changed slightly. Yi Guqin was slightly surprised by the nebula chain in his hand. Starry Sword Pavilion's martial arts indeed had extraordinary aspects. But how terrifying was Yi Guqin's battle instinct? He turned the heavy sword in his right hand. The heavy sword body blocked in front of him like a shield. Crown Prince Xinghong's palm slammed onto the sword body. With a loud explosion, Yi Guqin's figure fell back. Crown Prince Xinghong controlled the nebula chain again, pulled Yi Guqin back, and continued to attack with his palm. Really think that you can trap me? Yi Guqin's expression was cold. The perfect physical body's strength of the dragon and elephant and the power of the impeccable Vajra body erupted at the same time. Yi Guqin's hands and feet shook. Golden true energy gushed out, directly shattering the nebula chain that was binding him. At the same time, Yi Guqin borrowed this pulling force and swept his sword towards Crown Prince Xinghong fiercely once again. God-slaying sword technique, Yama? Endless blood-colored sword light soared into the sky along with this sword. A blood-colored Yama's shadow rose from the ground. This sword's power was extremely powerful, and its lethality was formidable. Heavenly Star Shield. Crown Prince Xinghong gave a cold cry. A streak of starlight shot out from his sleeve, expanding sharply against the wind, turning into a resplendent starlight shield. Clang! An ear-piercing sound of metal clashing burst out. The heavenly star shield trembled for a while, blocking Yi Guqin's sword momentum. When Crown Prince Xinghong saw the situation, he waved his hand again. Endless silver fine sand spread out. What's that? Throwing sand? Some spectating ancient martial art practitioners saw the situation and were somewhat stunned. It could actually use sand as a weapon? What do you know? If I'm not wrong, that should be Starry Sword Pavilion's unique star silver sand. Rumor has it that in Starry Sword Pavilion, there's an immemorial meteorite that fell from the sky. The 9 heaven star fire and star silver sand were obtained from the immemorial meteorite. Some people from the top dynasties who knew a little opened their mouths. The starry silver sand was a weapon unique to the Starry Sword Pavilion. Sure enough, when this cluster of star silver sand was sprinkled out, it immediately expanded in the wind and turned into a silver meteorite, falling towards Yi Guqin with a loud rumble. One had to know that the densely packed stellar silver sand could produce countless meteorites. It was as if a meteor shower was raining down on Yi Guqin. The Starry Sword Pavilion's methods are indeed extraordinary. Even the white-robed elder watching from the sky shook his head slightly. Although Yi Guqin, the dark horse, had surprised him, the Xinghong Crown Prince had a portion of the Starry Sword Pavilion's inheritance. He was indeed an extremely powerful opponent. Rumble! In the void, meteorites collided with each other, bursting into sparks that simultaneously enveloped Yi Guqin. The entire Forbidden City arena was covered. Even if one relied on wave-like subtle steps, there was no place to hide. This was an indiscriminate, carpet-style attack. If it were someone else, it might be a headache, but for me, the corners of Yiguchen's mouth curled up slightly. He stepped on the ground with one foot. As he raised his hand, endless genuine qi gathered like a dragon and burst out. Rumble. There seemed to be thousands of sword chimes and trembling sounds coming from Yiguchen's body. 108,000 sword souls surged out of his body. It was as if a green dragon had burst out from Yiguchen's body and swept out. In an instant, the entire Forbidden City arena was filled with sword qi and sword chimes. The 108,000 heaven-ripping sword souls were also a large area of effect attack. In the previous scuffle, Yiguchen had used the sword souls to sweep across the various dynasties. In front of the 108,000 sword souls, the number of people was not an advantage at all. At this moment, Yiguchen used the power of the sword souls again to collide with the meteorites that were formed by the starry silver sand. In just a few breaths' time, there seemed to be thousands of collisions bursting out and countless sparks splashed across the sky. It was the meteorites colliding with the sword souls. It was a spectacular scene that filled the entire sky and burst forth with vast waves. Under such a background, Xing Hong Crown Prince charged over again and formed a seal with both his hands. Daluo Star Seal. Xing Hong Crown Prince formed a seal with both his hands and vigorous star true qi rolled and brewed within. In the end, it turned into a silver seal that was dazzling. Starlight flowed on it as though it was depicting the trajectory of the stars. It's the martial arts of Starry Sword Pavilion again. There were exclamations from the surroundings again. Xing Hong Crown Prince was simply half an entry-level disciple of Starry Sword Pavilion. The divine weapon and techniques that he used belonged to Starry Sword Pavilion. Doesn't this mean that Yiguchen is fighting with an overlord-level force's disciple? Some people thought. Facing Xing Hong Crown Prince's powerful attack, Yiguchen's expression did not change. If he couldn't even deal with Xing Hong Crown Prince, how could he deal with Gu Xiaoyang, one of the 7 great bears in the future? Yiguchen activated the Azura sword principle and his eyes were swallowed by the blood color. A terrifying sword intent that was as deep as the sea erupted and turned the surroundings into a blood-colored sword domain. It's the sword principle. Those dynasty sky prides who had never seen the sword-saber duel were shocked once again. The sword principle was the true trump card of a sword cultivator. God-slaying sword art, Permitha. Using the Azura sword principle to activate the god-slaying sword art, the two complemented each other and the power increased by several folds. Yiguchen's sword tip swept across the void and the blood-colored sword qi turned into a gorgeous yet decadent Permitha flower. The red spider lily bloomed and brought not only magnificence but also death. Boom! The Daluo star seal clashed with the Permitha sword. The sword qi and power of the stars surged in all directions. Xing Hong Crown Prince's body shook and was blasted back. He let out a groan from his chest. Yiguchen was also blasted back. His shoulder trembled and dispersed the rebounding force. Is this all there is to Starry Sword Pavilion's martial arts? Yiguchen raised his sword and spoke in a cold tone. Yiguchen, it's too early for you to be complacent. Galaxy gloves. Xing Hong Crown Prince moved his hands and a pair of silver gloves appeared on his palms. They glowed with resplendent starlight and were imprinted with a spirit pattern array that emitted powerful fluctuations. You have quite a lot of treasures. Yiguchen's sword tip swept over. The heavenly star shield, star silver sand, and galaxy gloves were all treasures of Starry Sword Pavilion. As the strongest sky pride of the heavenly star dynasty, Xing Hong Crown Prince naturally received preferential treatment from the retired emperor. Heavenly Secret 7 Stars Fist. Xing Hong Crown Prince put on the supreme-grade galaxy gloves and threw out 7 punches in a row. Each punch was stronger than the last. It was as if there were 7 stars from outer space that came crashing down on Yiguchen at the same time. Azura Blood C18 levels. Yiguchen no longer held back and the Azura Sword Principle's domain appeared. The blood-colored sword qi turned into a blood tide that rumbled in all directions. An 18 levels of blood prison broke free from the Blood Sea and suppressed Xing Hong Crown Prince. After the sword intent turned into sword principle, Yiguchen could also use the sword principle domain to suppress the enemy. Rumble. Although Xing Hong Crown Prince's means were not weak, he was still unable to cope with the sword principle domain. The 18 levels of blood prison suppressed and extinguished Xing Hong Crown Prince's fist radiance. It was like a blood-colored mountain that suppressed Xing Hong Crown Prince. Is it over? Everyone's breathing seemed to have stopped. Was the champion of the preliminaries going to fall into Yiguchen's hands just like that? Yiguchen's expression did not change and there was no trace of joy. Yiguchen! A furious roar could be heard all of a sudden. The sword principle domain was shaking and there was a loud bang as endless starlight exploded. An incomparably dazzling starlight spread out like a wheel, shaking off the sword Dao domain. It's the Emperor-level cultivation technique, primary star scripture. Everyone exclaimed, and the people of the Heavenly Star Dynasty were even more excited. They knew that Xing Hong Crown Prince was going to be serious. Chapter 755. Although the primary pole constellation scripture was a lower royal level cultivation technique, it was a royal level cultivation technique. However, as long as it was a royal level cultivation technique, there was no need to doubt its power. Even if it was a lower royal level cultivation technique, it was still powerful enough. At that moment, Xing Hong Crown Prince finally activated the primary pole constellation scripture that he had cultivated for many years. Behind his head, the starry light will spread out lumps of dazzling starlight, as though it had transformed into a starry domain, resisting Yiguchen's 18 levels of Azura Blood Sea. 3,000 stars illusory body. Xing Hong Crown Prince's movements did not stop. After shaking off Yiguchen's sword Dao domain, he immediately executed his movement technique. In an instant, starlight surged on Xing Hong Crown Prince's body. Then, under everyone's astonished gaze, he divided into hundreds of light shadows. In every light shadow, Xing Hong Crown Prince's body was revealed. 3,000 stars illusory body. Rumor has it that when cultivated to the extreme, one can divide into 3,000 illusory bodies. It's impossible to distinguish them. The surrounding warriors could not help but comment when they saw the situation. Xing Hong Crown Prince's 3,000 stars illusory body was far from being cultivated to the transformative realm. He could only divide into hundreds of light shadows. However, these hundreds of light shadows were difficult to distinguish between real and fake. It was dazzling. Starlight Thorn. These hundreds of illusory bodies executed their martial arts at the same time. Starlight spat out from their palms as though it had turned into silver thorns, charging towards Yiguchen. Yiguchen's eyes were instantly swallowed by the color of blood. Activate the Eye of Azura. However, to Yiguchen's surprise, his Eye of Azura did not immediately see through the illusory bodies. This was because every illusory body was surging with star true energy. It was impossible to see through them, as though every one of them was real. Bush. The illusory bodies pierced through the air and attacked. Yiguchen blocked with his sword, but the illusory bodies were destroyed immediately. Fake. Yiguchen suddenly felt danger. His body moved to the side, and a starlight thorn brushed past Yiguchen's side, cutting off a strand of black hair. He actually dodged it? The real body of the Xing Hong Crown Prince was also surprised. His body flashed and once again merged into the hundreds of illusory figures. Yiguchen is in trouble now. He's in a desperate situation, surrounded by hundreds of phantoms. He can't tell which one is real and which one is fake. He's too passive. A few people watched nervously. Could it be that a dark horse's counterattack was going to end here? We can't say that Yiguchen isn't strong. We can only say that Xing Hong Crown Prince can be considered half a disciple of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion. His various treasures, cultivation techniques, and martial arts techniques aren't something that ordinary sky prides can compare to. There were also people who sighed and felt that Yiguchen was born at the wrong time. If he had appeared a little earlier or a little later, he might have been able to become the champion and create a miracle. It's a pity that the Eye of Azura's main use is to intimidate the enemy's mind, not to see through the flaws of the real and the fake. Yi Guqin sighed inwardly. If it were Gu Zun's Eye of the Saber Demon, he would have been able to see through the illusions. However, the Eye of Azura's main use wasn't to see through illusions. In this aspect, it couldn't compare to the Saber Demon's Eye, which could see through all flaws. But if you think you can suppress me with just this, then you must be dreaming. In the eyes of others, Yi Guqin was in a passive position. However, only Yi Guqin knew that his strength was far from being fully displayed. Since I can't see through them, then I'll use my spirit perception to scan them. Yi Guqin's primal chaos sea of consciousness suddenly spread out. An incomparably terrifying mass of primal chaos soul power covered the entire Forbidden Violet Summit arena. What a vigorous soul power! Is this really the soul power that a life and death chamber can possess? The moment Yi Guqin's spirit perception was released, it caused an uproar once again. This kid's spirit perception is also extraordinary. Even the white-robed sovereign was surprised. After breaking through the primal chaos sea of consciousness, Yi Guqin's spirit perception was extremely powerful. Even if the phantoms were disguised with true qi, they couldn't prevent the detection of the spirit perception. Swoosh! A phantom attacked again, but Yi Guqin ignored it directly. At the same time, his body suddenly tilted, and the Shenming heavy sword suddenly slashed at a phantom on the right behind him. Boom! The sword landed on the spot. How is this possible? There was a cry of surprise followed by a painful groan. The Xinghong Crown Prince's real body was blasted out. His arm made cracking sounds as he was heavily injured by the heavy sword. 5 Emperor's Cosmos Sword Formation, go! Yi Guqin saw through the Xinghong Crown Prince's real body and used his ultimate technique again. Endless 5-colored formation runes spread out, and 5 different colored divine lights split the sky and earth. They were the 5 formation swords of Emperor Jin, Emperor Qing, Emperor He, Emperor Qi, and Emperor Huang. Rumble! The entire 5-colored arena was enveloped by the 5 Emperor's Cosmos Sword Formation. The 5 formation swords directly attacked the Xinghong Crown Prince's real body. Damn it! The Xinghong Crown Prince's face was cold. He took out the Heavenly Star Shield again and clashed with the formation swords. The surrounding hundreds of phantoms also disappeared at the same time because they had lost their effect and could no longer confuse Yi Guqin. Earth Rank Formation. Yi Guqin's 5 Emperor's Cosmos Sword Formation shocked many of the dynasty's Sky Prides who had never seen the sword and saber duel. A life and death threshold martial artist activating an Earth Rank Formation. In their eyes, it was absolutely a fantasy. But now they saw it with their own eyes. 5 Elements Sword Field. Yi Guqin activated the illusory 5 Elements Sword Field again and cooperated with the 5 Emperor's Cosmos Sword Formation to suppress the Xinghong Crown Prince. The surrounding spectators were completely speechless. The Azura Sword Dao and the 5 Elements Sword Intent had completely intimidated them. Thousand Shadows Star Kill. The Xinghong Crown Prince's face was as calm as water. The galaxy gloves burst out with endless starlight. In an instant, it was as if he had thrown out hundreds and thousands of punches. At the same time, he controlled the Heavenly Star Shield to block the attack of the 5 formation swords. Thousand God Tribulation, Heaven and Earth Extermination. Yi Guqin held the sword with both hands and the sword wings bloomed. Vigorous and biting cold sword qi gathered at the tip of the sword and slashed at the Xinghong Crown Prince. Rumble! The sound of the collision was like rolling thunder, sweeping in all directions. The Xinghong Crown Prince was forced back again and coughed up blood. The Heavenly Star Shield, which was comparable to a supreme-grade defensive divine weapon, was almost unable to withstand the bombardment of the 5 formation swords. Cracks had already begun to appear on its surface. The Xinghong Crown Prince's situation is not good. Some of the dynasty's Sky Prides frowned. Zi Donglai clenched his fists tightly as cold sweat seeped out of his back. If the Xinghong Crown Prince really lost, then he was finished. After losing half of his innate purple qi, even if Zi Donglai didn't become a cripple, he would still be half crippled and become mediocre from then on. Yi Guqin, don't get carried away. The Xinghong Crown Prince was also furious after being forced back continuously. His eyes were bloodshot. Even if he didn't underestimate Yiguchen's strength still greatly exceeded his expectations. The Xinghong Crown Prince knew that if he didn't go all out today, he might really be defeated by Yiguchen. You forced me to do this. Primary Pole Star Cannon, Star King descends. The Xinghong Crown Prince was seething with anger as he let out a long howl. His hair was loose and his eyes seemed to burst out with endless starlight. The starlight wheel behind his head suddenly spread out and enveloped his body. Countless mysterious and profound star marks appeared on the Xinghong Crown Prince's body. A set of astral heavenly armor that overflowed with starlight also appeared on the surface of his body. At this moment, the Xinghong Crown Prince was really like the Star King descending into the world. His aura was powerful and oppressive. Chapter 756. Is this the strongest form of the Xinghong Crown Prince? Looking at the Xinghong Crown Prince, who was floating in midair with airflow surging and starlight shining in the sky. The hundreds of thousands of spectators around the forbidden Violet Mountain were speechless. At this moment, the starlight wheel behind the Xinghong Crown Prince's head was spinning slowly. Waves of starlight were being emitted from it. His eyes were completely filled with starlight. His pupils couldn't be seen clearly as his eyes were filled with blazing light. The astral heavenly armor on his body made him look like a star god of war. His aura was very oppressive. This was the astral king possession form that could be manifested when the primary pole astral scripture was activated to the extreme. Yiguchen, now, let's fight again. The Xinghong Crown Prince spoke. His voice was much louder than before. It was like the sound of heaven as it echoed. He attacked directly. His figure was extremely fast. In almost an instant he was in front of Yiguchen. It was simple. He threw out a punch, accompanied by the spreading starlight. Yiguchen slashed out with his sword. The blade of the sword collided with the galaxy boxing glove. A majestic force surged. It was a few times stronger than before. Even Yiguchen couldn't react in time and was forced to take a few steps back. Humph, Yiguchen, it's your stupidity to force me to use my strongest form. The Xinghong Crown Prince's face was cold. At this moment, his strength, speed, defense, and true chi were more than a few times stronger than before. His current strength was estimated to be around the 8th stage of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. In addition to the various means of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion, the Xinghong Crown Prince didn't believe that he would lose to Yiguchen. You're too optimistic. Yiguchen saw the situation and activated the edgeless sword intent once again. The majestic sword intent swept out and turned into an illusory sword Dao domain in midair. It was the gravity sword domain formed by the edgeless sword intent. Another sword intent. The dynasty's sky prides were stunned. Although they had heard about it before, it was still shocking. 2 great sword intents and a great sword Dao. They were all at the supreme level. It was shocking. These, 2 peerless sword intents, 1 peerless sword Dao, and that terrifying sea of consciousness and fleshly body. What exactly is this kid's background? Even Reverend Whiterun, who was standing high in the sky, had a change in expression as he took a deep breath. Even now, he did not dare to believe that Yiguchen was someone from a low-grade empire. Who knows, there might be a powerful force behind this kid. The white-robed old man's gaze deepened. In the arena of the Forbidden City, after Yiguchen brought out his gravity sword domain, a special gravitational field pressed down. The entire arena seemed to sink down a little. This kind of domain could not affect Yiguchen, but it pressed down on the Xinghong Crown Prince. After transforming into the Star King form, all aspects of Crown Prince Xinghong's attributes skyrocketed. But now, he felt as if an ancient mountain was pressing down on his head. Zhang Xian's strength, speed, and so on were all suppressed. Unlike Gu Zun, he did not possess the 7 slaughter ancient saber that specialized in breaking through sword Dao domains. Humph, even so, I can still suppress and kill you. Crown Prince Xinghong sneered. Although he was suppressed by the gravity sword domain and his skyrocketing strength was weakened, He was still much stronger than before. Star-picking hand. Crown Prince Xinghong raised his hand and began to display his true ultimate skill. Vigorous star true qi gathered in his hand and finally turned into a huge silver palm. It was covered with star marks and was indescribably mysterious. It was as if he could crush a mountain with a single palm strike. It's the Star Universe Sword Pavilion's Emperor-level martial art, the star-picking hand. Some people recognized the martial art that Crown Prince Xinghong was displaying and immediately cried out in surprise. With Crown Prince Xinghong's original strength, it was difficult for him to easily display an Emperor-level martial art. However, after activating his Star King form, he could display it with his full strength. Reincarnation Sword Lotus. As Yi Guqin raised his hand, golden sword qi spurted out and turned into a golden sword lotus. This golden sword lotus did not have the previous 72 leaves. Instead, it had become 108 leaves. After this period of meditation and cultivation, Yi Guqin's cultivation of the reincarnation sword lotus had also taken a step forward. The golden sword lotus with 108 leaves rotated in the air. It was beautiful, but it also carried a fatal lethality. Feng Manlu relied on the complete 360 leaves of the reincarnation sword lotus to instantly kill Xian Wuji, who had just become a venerable realm expert. Although Yi Guqin's sword lotus was far from being comparable to Feng Manlu's, it was still a powerful weapon to deal with Crown Prince Xinghong. The golden sword lotus drew a beautiful line in the air and collided with the star-picking hand. Suddenly, the heavens and earth went silent. After a few breaths, a violent wave of true energy spread out, accompanied by a deafening buzzing sound. Endless sword qi boiled and the power of the stars surged. They collided and destroyed each other. The huge silver hand tried to grab the golden sword lotus in its palm and destroy it. However, the golden sword lotus bloomed and burst out with endless sword qi, piercing through the huge hand. For a moment, a series of explosions were heard. The entire Forbidden City was covered by endless light. In the aurora, Yi Guqin and Crown Prince Xinghong's figures were also pushed back by the aftershocks. Both of them were injured. However, in the blink of an eye, he flashed forward and tangled with them. Yi Guqin, my true qi, strength, speed, and defense are all invincible. How can you be my opponent? Crown Prince Xinghong roared and his eyes shone brightly. Yi Guqin swung his heavy sword at Crown Prince Xinghong. The astral heavenly armor on his body released mysterious defensive runes and reduced the force by 70%. He was unable to hurt Crown Prince Xinghong. Is that so? Do you think you are the only one who can change forms? Hearing this, Yi Guqin also activated the Ancient God tactic. In terms of level, the Ancient God tactic was only higher than the primary pole star scripture. Boom! An ancient and desolate aura was emitted from Yi Guqin's body. His body expanded to 9 feet. Ancient God light runes spread out from under his skin and the star mark appeared. Yi Guqin transformed into his Ancient God form. His physical strength increased by 5 times. Every move he made caused the air to compress and explode. Let's try again. Yi Guqin swung his Xianming heavy sword again. The sword wind was oppressive and there was a violent whistling sound. Boom! As though heavenly weapons clashed, the heavy sword struck the astral heavenly armor. The ferocious force caused Crown Prince Xinghong's expression to change. Swoosh! Crown Prince Xinghong's body was like an arrow as he crashed onto the stage. Cracks spread out around him. With just one sword, Crown Prince Xinghong, who was in his Star King form, was sent flying. All the martial artists were stunned. They didn't expect that even Crown Prince Xinghong, who was in his Star King form, couldn't suppress Yi Guqin. Damn it! In the pit, there was a burst of light. Crown Prince Xinghong escaped with blood at the corner of his mouth. Although he had the astral heavenly armor to protect him, Yi Guqin, who was in his Ancient God form, was too strong. The sword earlier had directly injured his lungs. The two of them stood facing each other and looked at each other. In an instant, the chaotic battle quietened down strangely. Yi Guqin, who was in his Ancient God form. Crown Prince Xinghong, who was in his Star King form. Both of them changed their forms. Their abilities increased tremendously as they faced each other with equal harshness. Yiguchen, you have indeed exceeded my expectations. Next, I will decide the outcome. Fallen Star Bow, Star Destroyer Arrow. Crown Prince Xinghong extended his hand. 2 lumps of starlight bloomed from his hand. Chapter 757. The 2 balls of light in Xinghong Crown Prince's hands dissipated. In his left hand was a silver bow that was 6 feet long. In his right hand were 9 silver arrows. The arrowhead of each arrow was engraved with armor-piercing spiritual runes. These were the weapons of the Starry Sword Pavilion. Oh no, Brother Yi is in trouble. Kenpo's expression changed. The Falling Star Bow and the Star Punishment Arrow were famous weapons of the Starry Sword Pavilion. It was rumored that the 9 arrowheads of the Star Punishment Arrow were made of metal from the ancient meteorites of the Starry Sword Pavilion. You only know how to rely on external items? Yiguchen's eyes were cold. Although he said that, he didn't underestimate the Falling Star Punishment Arrow. He felt an extremely dangerous aura from the Star Punishment Arrow. Star Punishment Arrow. Xinghong Crown Prince drew the bow. In the form of a Star King, he was extremely powerful. He pulled the Falling Star Bow to a full moon and placed the Star Punishment Arrow on it. The arrow shot out as if it had turned into a star dragon. It roared in the void and shot towards Yiguchen. Immortal Fall. Seeing this, Yiguchen swept out his celestial slaying sword technique and performed his ultimate move. However, Yiguchen's ancient god power wasn't able to send the Star Punishment Arrow flying. A huge force came from the sword. Yiguchen was pushed back, and the web between his thumb and forefinger was torn. This arrow is close to the power of an emperor-class martial art. Sensing the terrifying might of the Star Destroyer Arrow, the surrounding spectators all sucked in a breath of cold air. After the Star Punishment Arrow was shot out, it flew towards Xinghong Crown Prince as if it had a mind of its own. The retired emperor of the Starry Dynasty is really generous to give such a treasure to Xinghong Crown Prince. Princess Phoenix Dawn's charming face was cold and filled with disdain. Xinghong Crown Prince's strength was definitely weaker than Yiguchen. However, he was able to pose a threat to Yiguchen with his various weapons and treasures. Su Jianshi and the others felt their hearts tighten. Again. Crown Prince Xinghong was in high spirits, his hair fluttering in the wind. Once again, he drew the bow and knocked an arrow, infusing all of his star energy into the Falling Star Bow. He shot out 3 star execution arrows in succession, and it was as if 3 starry dragons had burst forth, causing ripples to appear in the sky. Everywhere the arrows passed, the arena would shatter, and 3 deep marks would be plowed out. Is this what you're relying on? Yiguchen's expression was cold, and there wasn't much fear in his eyes. Myriad God Tribulation, Fall of the Masses. Yiguchen supported himself with the Azura Sword Dao, and blood-red sword Qi filled the sky. Common Life Fall, swept out, accompanied by the cries of all living beings. It was like a sword that could destroy the heavens and destroy the earth. Boom, boom, boom. This sword strike slashed apart 3 star eradication arrows in succession. Again, 7-star alignment. Those star extermination arrows flew back towards Crown Prince Xinghong. He knocked 7-star extermination arrows on his Falling Star Bow at the same time. Activating the astral true energy in his body, blood trickled down from the corner of his mouth. Even the fingers he used to draw the bow felt as though they were about to break. Boom, 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 boom. 7 explosive sounds rang out continuously. 7-star eradication arrows were shot out at the same time. The residual true energy that burst out tore the air apart and destroyed the arena. It was as if 7 astral dragons had rushed out at the same time, crossing the heavens and shooting towards Yiguchen. It was extremely powerful. Just 1-star eradication arrow's power was close to an emperor-level martial art. At this moment, 7 arrows were shot out at the same time. It was as if they could destroy the stars in the sky. The fluctuations were extremely powerful. Facing this fatal arrow, hundreds of thousands of people held their breaths as they waited. Could it be that the preliminary champion had come to an end? Just as everyone was waiting anxiously, Yiguchen finally moved. He raised his hand, an endless sword soared into the sky. His entire person seemed to have turned into a sharp sword that could slash the heavens and destroy the earth. Body into the firmament, heaven and earth into the sword. The human heart is fearless. The sword is unparalleled. Man and sword become one. Yiguchen finally used the man and sword become one, displaying the true essence of the sword. It's man and sword become one. The members of the various dynasties had astonished expressions. The white-robed old man was even more surprised. Although he wasn't a sword cultivator, he'd heard of the name of man and sword becoming one. In the entire South Horizon region, probably only some experts with extremely high attainments in the sword Dao were able to comprehend it. Yet now, he actually saw it on a genius from a low-level dynasty. Yiguchen flashed explosively towards Xinghong Crown Prince, and the 7-star eradication arrows were unable to obstruct his figure. Yiguchen's figure was the sharpest sword. It was as if it had become one with his Netharism heavy sword, and it directly blasted the 7-star eradication arrows flying. Of course, after suffering the force of the recoil, fresh blood flowed from the corners of Yiguchen's mouth. But this wasn't a big problem. The tip of his sword flashed explosively towards Xinghong Crown Prince. Impossible! 9-star alignment, heaven and earth eradication. Xinghong Crown Prince's pupils constricted abruptly when he saw this, and he revealed astonishment. He completely did not expect that the power of man and sword becoming one was actually so powerful. Those 7-star eradication arrows flew back. Along with the remaining 2, Xinghong Crown Prince placed them on the falling star bow together. He spat out a large mouthful of blood essence, soaking it on the falling star bow. His entire person's aura was dispirited, falling by a large chunk. Clearly, this was Xinghong Crown Prince's final method, wanting to thoroughly determine a victor with Yiguchen. 9-star God eradication, open for me. Xinghong Crown Prince pulled with all his might, and under everyone's astonished gazes. Xinghong Crown Prince's fingers that pulled the bow were actually cut into his flesh by the bowstring. Of course, those 9 arrows also shot out explosively. 9-star God eradication. 9 arrows shooting out in unison seemed to really be able to exterminate the gods in the sky. The aura of annihilation swept out the summit of the Forbidden City. Dugu 9 swords, sword-breaking style. Yiguchen also executed his signature ultimate skill. Man and sword becoming one, slashing apart heaven and earth. Sword-breaking style, breaking all laws. Bang, bang, bang. 9 streaks of resplendent star eradication light rainbows collided together with Yiguchen's sword move in succession. Great annihilation erupted. The aftershock of the impact destroyed the surrounding arenas. The summit of the Forbidden City that was originally riddled with scars suffered even more impact. Rubble pierced through the air, mountain rocks collapsing. With a loud bang, a mushroom cloud rose up from the summit. Several 100,000 gazes landed on the summit of the Forbidden City in unison. Just how was the result? When the smoke and dust dissipated, Yiguchen's figure stood. The hand that held the sword had fresh blood flowing down. His shoulder also had a bloody hole pierced by a star eradication arrow. But overall, it was still considered all right. On the other side, Xinghong Crown Prince's hair was disheveled, half kneeling on the ground. The astral heavenly armor on his body spread out enormous cracks. Under everyone's shocked gazes, the heavenly armor shattered. Xinghong Crown Prince raised his head to the sky and vomited a large mouthful of blood. His aura fell frenziedly, returning to his original state. Who won and who lost, there was no need to say any more. He won. Heavens, am I seeing things? Yiguchen won. That's right, Yiguchen won. Yiguchen has created an unprecedented record. Coming from a low-grade dynasty, he swept through all the high-grade and top-grade dynasties. At this moment, Yiguchen was the center of attention. He had become the champion of the preliminaries. No, how could this be? Zidonglai's face was pale. As for the people that Yiguchen had defeated, Vermilion Bird Jade, Yuenin, and the others, they had completely lost their souls. It was as if they had been petrified as they stood rooted to the ground. I knew it would be this result. Kenpo smiled. He wasn't surprised at all. Yiguchen, you really didn't let me down. Princess Phoenix Dawn's watery eyes shone brightly. Actually, she wasn't sure if Yiguchen had the strength to defeat Xinghong Crown Prince. But the facts proved everything. After a moment of dead silence, the crowd erupted into deafening cheers. No one would have thought that Yiguchen, the dark horse of a low-grade dynasty, would succeed in his counterattack. He swept through all the geniuses of the various dynasties with his sword and became the champion. Finally, I succeeded. Yiguchen revealed a faint smile as he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. After becoming the champion, he would have the status of a preparatory disciple of an overlord-grade faction. After that, he would be able to choose which faction he wanted to join. At the same time, he would also be able to obtain emperor-grade cultivation techniques, martial arts, and many other benefits. This was very important to Yiguchen, because he had finally grasped the opportunity to fight against Gu Xiaoyang and Di Haotian. No. How is this possible? How can I lose? Xinghong Crown Prince's face was twisted. He couldn't wait to ask the supremacies of the heavenly astral dynasty to kill Yiguchen. But with the white-robed supremacies and the others present, it was impossible for him to succeed. Damn it. Xinghong Crown Prince's face was twisted, and his teeth were about to shatter. Losing to Yiguchen in front of hundreds of thousands of people and in front of Princess Feng, she was simply like 1,000 arrows piercing his heart, causing Xinghong Crown Prince's face to be extremely twisted. How exciting, but the outcome is already decided. The white-robed supremacies smiled faintly. He wasn't a member of any dynasty, so he wouldn't be biased towards any side. At this moment, he stood in the sky and said in a clear voice, "Everyone, the champion of this preliminaries has been decided. This person is, however," just as the white-robed old man was about to open his mouth and announce that Yiguchen was the champion, a clear and cold voice suddenly resounded in the heavens and the earth. The champion is Xinghong Crown Prince. As soon as this voice sounded out, everyone was shocked. The calmness on Yiguchen's face was instantly broken. His pitch-black cold eyes carried an incomparably cold expression as he looked at the flying ship that was traversing the void in the distance. The Overlord-grade faction, the Starry Sword Pavilion, had arrived. Chapter 758. The champion is the Xinghong Crown Prince. This sentence reverberated between heaven and earth, and all the cheers stopped abruptly. Who dared to openly disrupt the order of the prodigy battlefield preliminaries? Even the Xinghong Crown Prince, no matter how much he hated Yiguchen, did not dare to let the supremacies of the Starry Dynasty interfere and disrupt the order of the preliminaries. Because the consequences were too serious. The Prodigy Battlefield was a grand event of the entire South Horizon region, and all the Overlord forces would participate. Even the preliminaries could not be disrupted by anyone. However, at this moment, someone actually said that the champion was the Xinghong Crown Prince, confusing the truth. Everyone's gaze turned to the source of the voice. Even the white-robed supremacy standing in the sky had a slightly solemn expression as he looked into the distance. However, when everyone saw the silver flying boat, their expressions instantly froze. That seems to be the Starry Sword Pavilion's flying boat? What? The people from the Overlord Force, the Starry Sword Pavilion, are here. But even if they're from the Starry Sword Pavilion, why did they say that the Xinghong Crown Prince is the champion? Everyone lowered their voices and discussed animatedly. The white-robed supremacy's expression also froze. The flying boat crossed the void, and a young man and woman stood on the deck. The woman wore a starry cloud robe, and her eyes were like stars. Her skin was smooth, and she was arrogant and cold. The man wore a starry cloud robe, and his eyes were filled with divine radiance. The two of them were Song Yuyao and Zhou Heng, who had rushed over from the Starfall mountain range. Behind them stood two elders with heavy auras. They were the two deacons of the Starry Sword Pavilion, and they were both supremacies of the Sky Palace. It's two of the 7 great bears of the Starry Sword Pavilion, Alcade star Song Yuyao and Alioth star Zhou Heng. Many of the hundreds of thousands of people exclaimed when they saw the newcomers. After all, the 7 great bears of the Starry Sword Pavilion were famous in the entire South Horizon region. The 7 prodigies representing the Starry Sword Pavilion were all outstanding in their own ways, and they were the best among the prodigies. At this moment, everyone was surprised to see that it was the 2 of them who had arrived. Normally, the overlord forces would rarely send people to this kind of preliminaries, not to mention sending prodigies and deacons. However, at that moment, the crowd's attention was not on that. Instead, it was on Song Yuyao's words. The champion was Crown Prince Xinghong. Song Yuyao. Yi Guqin stood at the peak of the Forbidden City. He raised his head slightly and looked at the airship floating in the air. Song Yuyao stood tall and straight, her dress fluttering in the wind. Her jade-like face was as arrogant and cold as before, and she viewed the people of these dynasties as ants. "You're still alive?" Song Yuyao looked at Yi Guqin. Her expression changed slightly, but it was more of a surprise. While she couldn't remember Yi Guqin's name, she had been slapped hard by Jun Xiaoyao back in the Tianhuang Plains because of Yi Guqin. As such, she remembered what Yi Guqin looked like. Song Yuyao had never imagined that Yi Guqin was still alive. And now, he had even won first place in the preliminaries. Song Yuyao naturally would not let Yi Guqin become the champion. Although she felt that Yi Guqin was not a threat to her and Gu Xiaoyang, she would not let Yi Guqin become the champion and grow. "Of course I'm alive. Otherwise, how could I take Gu Xiaoyang's life?" Yi Guqin was not afraid at all. He looked at her coldly. His feud with Gu Xiaoyang was the greatest, but Song Yuyao was also unforgivable. Back in the Tianhuang Plains, the 2 of them were like gods. Song Yuyao even attacked Su Jianshi, slapping her and seriously injuring her. Song Yuyao would have to pay for this grudge eventually. Impudent. An ant dares to speak such nonsense. Junior Xiaoyang is a dragon amongst men. He can crush you to death with a single finger. Hearing Yi Guqin's words, Song Yuyao coldly rebuked. Could it be that Gu Xiaoyang's special ability was taken from this person? Zhou Heng thought to himself when he saw what happened. What is going on? Does Yi Guqin have a grudge with Gu Xiaoyang? The members of the other dynasties present were bewildered. Only the people from the Saint Origin dynasty knew the reason and whispered to those who did not know. What? Gu Xiaoyang's special ability, the innate sword embryo, was taken from Yi Guqin? How is this possible? Being deprived of his innate ability is equivalent to being half-crippled. How can he still cultivate to such a level? Yeah. If that's the case, Yi Guqin's cultivation would be terrifying if his special ability was not taken away. He would be comparable to the 10 great young masters, right? After they heard the truth, the members of the other dynasties were extremely astounded, and their faces were filled with shock. Even Kenpo's face froze as it was his first time hearing about it. So the innate sword embryo that Gu Xiaoyang used to dominate the Nantian region was taken from Brother Yi. Oh my God! Kenpo was completely shocked. He could not imagine how powerful Yi Guqin would be if the innate sword embryo was not taken away. He might even become one of the 10 great young masters. Unfortunately, there were no ifs. However, Yi Guqin had still reached such a level even after losing the innate sword embryo. That alone was enough to make people admire him. I say that Xinghong Crown Prince is the champion of this preliminary round. Do any of you have any objections? Song Yuyao said. Although she was surprised that Yi Guqin did not die, that was all. Because in Song Yuyao's eyes, Yi Guqin was still an ant. Just like an ant, it did not matter if it was trampled to death. If it was not trampled to death, she would not mind because she did not care. This is against the rules. The white-robed reverend said hesitantly. Although he did not want to offend the Starry Sword Pavilion, it was too much to distort the truth in front of everyone. But don't the Starry Sword Pavilion have the right to do that? Song Yuyao raised her eyebrows. Behind her, the 2 reverends of the Starry Sword Pavilion stood in the sky and a terrifying aura swept out. Even the white-robed reverend took 2 steps back with a pale face. The champion of the preliminary round is Xinghong Crown Prince. The white-robed reverend's face stiffened and he could only say that. Oh, by the way, this person's qualification to participate in the battlefield of prodigies is also invalid. Song Yuyao said indifferently. What? As soon as she said that, the hundreds of thousands of spectators were stunned and felt indignant for Yi Guchen. It was fine if the champion was taken away and given to Xinghong Crown Prince. But now, Yi Guchen was not even allowed to participate in the battlefield of prodigies. This is too much. Many people cursed in their hearts but did not dare to say it out loud. After all, the prestige of the Starry Sword Pavilion was there. Song Yuyao did not want Yi Guchen to get a spot in the battlefield of prodigies. She did not want him to step into the South Horizon region and be noticed by the other overlords. If there was an accident in the end and Yi Guchen entered the overlords, it would be quite troublesome. Therefore, Song Yuyao directly put an end to the possibility of Yi Guchen's rise. Her method was overbearing and vicious. Chapter 759. The hundreds of thousands of spectators were silent at this moment, unable to make a single sound. The Starry Sword Pavilion was like a mountain that weighed down on everyone's heart. Even if they felt injustice for Yi Guchen, they could only keep it in their hearts. The situation was stronger than the person. However, amidst this complete silence, a loud laugh suddenly rang out. Ha ha ha, Yi Guchen, don't you think it's funny? Do you think the heavens are messing with you? The heavily injured Xinghong Crown Prince, whose hair was disheveled, suddenly roared with laughter towards the sky. Even he didn't expect the outcome to be like this. Xinghong Crown Prince looked at Yi Guchen with ridicule and mockery. So what if you're powerful? So what if you're a dark horse? So what if you're invincible? In the end, you still have to compromise and give in to the Starry Sword Pavilion. Xinghong Crown Prince wanted to laugh. It was too satisfying. It was as if the heavens were looking after him. Zi Donglai was also happy. Originally, he and Kenpo had made a bet. Kenpo had won. But now, Zi Donglai didn't have to give up half of his connate purple chi. How can this be? Su Jianshir's body trembled with anger. Her face was cold. She looked at the blood-stained young man standing silently at the top of the Forbidden City. Her heart was in pain and her eyes were red. Yi Guchen had sacrificed a lot in his cultivation. In the preliminaries, he had swept away all his opponents and made a comeback. But in the end, this was the outcome. Not only did he lose the championship because of Song Yuyao's words, he even lost the qualification to participate in the battlefield of prodigies. Yi Guchen could only compete with Gu Xiaoyang and Di Haoyan if he participated in the battlefield of prodigies and joined an overlord-class force. However, all his hard work had been erased by Song Yuyao's words. How ironic! How ridiculous! Ha! Yi Guchen laughed. At first, it was a little bit, then it gradually became louder. In the end, he burst into laughter. Even Crown Prince Xinghong stopped laughing and looked at Yi Guchen with a stunned expression. Then Yi Guchen won't go crazy from anger, right? As they looked at Yi Guchen, who was laughing towards the sky, the entire crowd was silent. They felt a kind of sadness. No one would be able to accept such a thing. Su Jianshi, Yan Wushuang, and all the disciples of the Sword Sect's tower shed tears. They were crying foul for Yi Guchen, for Yi Guchen. After a burst of laughter, Yi Guchen looked at the white-robed venerable master and said, "Senior, do you still remember what you said at the start of the preliminaries? How fair is there in the world? Martial artists of my generation use force to break all unfairness." Yi Guchen stood at the peak of the Forbidden City. His voice was like the sound of a sword, resounding through the heavens and earth. "Sigh, I'm really sorry." The white-robed supremacy felt guilty. He lowered his head and sighed. "Ah, do you think you can break the injustice?" Song Yuyao sneered when she heard this. "You're destined to be trampled by junior brother Xiaoyang. This is your fate. Your Xiantian sword embryo is destined to be used by junior brother Xiaoyang. This is your fate. You're destined to be an ant that can be trampled on for the rest of your life. This is your fate. Song Yuyao's tone was cold and cruel. Her 3 sentences made the entire crowd fall into silence. That was the most heart-rending words. Shut up. Su Jianshi, Yan Wushuang, and the others shed tears as their bodies trembled. They couldn't wait to kill Song Yuyao. The Starry Sword Pavilion has gone too far. Kenpo clenched his fist, but he also felt helpless. How tyrannical! Princess Fengshi's face was filled with mockery. She had finally witnessed the tyrannical power of an overlord force. The hundreds of thousands of people were dead silent. All of their gazes were fixed on the silent young man standing on top of the forbidden city. Song Yuyao's words were too vicious. She wanted to destroy Yi Guchen's soul. It was conceivable that if Yi Guchen was oppressed and doubted him, his martial arts heart would be shaken. In the end, he might not be able to recover from the setback and become a cripple. Ha! Yi Guchen smiled faintly. Song Yuyao wanted to use this opportunity to destroy his martial heart. Her intentions were truly hateful. However, Yi Guchen's martial heart was as firm as a rock. How could Song Yuyao destroy it with just a few words? Who is qualified to judge Yi Guchen's fate? Yi Guchen stood alone at the peak of the Forbidden City. At this moment, he was the center of attention, and it was as if the heavens and earth couldn't bend his pride. I, Yi Guchen, have never believed in the heavens, earth, or fate. I only believe in myself and the sword in my hand. If fate is unfair. Yi Guchen held the Xianming heavy sword and pointed it at Song Yuyao. Then let's fight to the end. Yi Guchen's aura gushed out as soon as he spoke. His black hair fluttered and his eyes were disdainful. An aura that was as deep as the sea gushed out, throwing the heavens and earth into chaos and changing the weather. Boom! Even the heavily injured Xinghong Crown Prince was blasted away by this aura and fell off the peak of the Forbidden City. At this moment, no one paid attention to Xinghong Crown Prince. No one looked at Song Yuyao. All the martial artists' gazes landed on Yi Guchen. Their gazes landed on the youth who was unyielding and pointed his sword at the Starry Sword Pavilion. If fate is unfair, fight to the end. Song Yuyao, get down here. Yi Guchen opened his mouth and roared furiously. It was as if he was shaking down the gods and Buddhas. His fierce fighting spirit was like a volcano boiling. His unyielding will could crush the heavens. Even Song Yuyao was shocked by this aura, and her expression changed slightly. She did not expect Yi Guchen to dare to challenge her. Back in the Tianhuang Plains, Yi Guchen could not last more than a few moves against Gu Xiaoyang. If Jun Xiaoyao did not intervene in the end, Yi Guchen would have died. But now, Yi Guchen dared to challenge her. Song Yuyao's face was cold, feeling that her identity was being challenged. Senior Sister Song, let me take care of this aunt, Zhou Heng said with a faint smile. Song Yuyao had always been indifferent to him and did not say much to him. Now that he finally had a chance to show off, Zhou Heng would not miss it. Then you do it. It doesn't matter if you kill him. Song Yuyao curled her lips. Okay. Zhou Heng smiled and descended from the sky. You are Yi Guchen, right? I have to say, you are indeed ridiculous. But you are too naive to think that you can take on Senior Sister Song. Let me take care of you. Zhou Heng smiled contemptuously. He had not broken through to the divine dwelling stage and was only at level 9 of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth. But he knew that he was invincible among the geniuses of the various dynasties. Even the Crown Prince of Xinghong was no match for him. Are you sure you want to die? Yi Guchen said indifferently. The smile on Zhou Heng's face disappeared and was replaced by a murderous intent. Are you talking to me? Zhou Heng picked his ear. Yi Guchen did not say anything. He turned his eyes to the people of the Sword Sect Tower. He suddenly said, Today, I, Yi Guchen, officially withdraw from the Sword Sect Tower. From now on, what I do has nothing to do with the Sword Sect Tower. Yi Guchen shouted, his voice spreading in all directions. He said that he was withdrawing from the Sword Sect. Senior brother Yi. At this moment, the expressions of all the people from the Sword Sect's pagoda changed, and they all shouted out. Yi Guchen. Even Yen Chang'e was a little surprised. Thank you for taking care of me in the Sword Sect Tower. But from now on I, Yi Guchen, am no longer a member of the Sword Sect Tower. Everything I do has nothing to do with you." Yiguchen smiled. The hearts of all the spectators trembled. Yiguchen was withdrawing from the Sword Sect at this time because he was going to do something earth-shattering and did not want to implicate the sect. All the spectators looked at each other and had a premonition. Yiguchen was going to do something earth-shattering today. Chapter 760. The entire place fell silent. No one had expected that Yi Guchen would choose to withdraw from the sect at this juncture. What did this mean? Many people didn't dare to think further. They could only watch nervously. Something big was about to happen today. "No, Yi Guchen, I won't allow you to withdraw from the sect." Yan Wushuang's eyes were red as she shouted. It was hard to imagine that the young girl, who always had an indifferent expression, was on the verge of tears at this moment. Her delicate body was trembling, and her gaze was fixed on Yi Guchen as she shouted loudly. "Shuang, thank you for taking care of me in the Sword Sect's Pagoda Forest." Yi Guchen's tone became gentle as he looked at Yan Wushuang. Although Yi Guchen didn't have a good relationship with Yan Wushuang in the beginning, all the troubles disappeared when he called her Shuang. "No, Shuang, I won't allow you to withdraw from the sect." Yan Wushuang finally cried. She bit her lips and her heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. She knew that this unyielding youth was withdrawing because he didn't want to be a burden to the Sword Sect's Pagoda Forest. But it was also because of this that Yan Wushuang knew that Yi Guchen would do something shocking. It might even endanger her life. Su Jianshir's eyes were also filled with tears, but she didn't say anything because she wasn't a disciple of the Sword Sect's Pagoda Forest. "Silly boy, I will be by your side no matter what you do." Su Jianshir didn't say a word, but she had already made up her mind. Even if Yi Guchen wanted to go against the Starry Sword Pavilion, Su Jianshir would still stand by his side. "Senior brother Yi." All the disciples of the Sword Sect's Pagoda Forest gnashed their teeth. The female disciples of the inner court shed tears. They couldn't bear to see such a sad scene. The male disciples clenched their fists and held back their tears. After going through so much, Yi Guchen had become the benchmark in the hearts of all the disciples of the Sword Sect's Pagoda Forest. "Since that's the case, I'll also withdraw from the sect." Feng Manlu smiled faintly as he said casually. "Lord Feng Manlu." All the disciples and elders of the Sword Sect's Pagoda Forest were stunned. "Is wind-sweeping building withdrawing as well?" "Manlu." Even Yen Chang'e was shocked. "Senior Feng, you don't have to." Yi Guchen hesitated. He did not expect that wind-sweeping building would leave the sect with him. How can I let my disciple face everything alone?" Feng Manlu didn't seem to mind at all. Even though Yi Guchen was facing an overlord force, his handsome face remained calm. "Yi Guchen, do whatever you want to do. Lester will be behind you." Feng Manlu stood high in the sky with his hands clasped behind his back. His clothes fluttered in the wind, making him look handsome and warm. "Behind you, there are 4 simple words." It was plain and ordinary, but it was enough to move people. After all, Yi Guchen was up against an overlord-class force. In the face of such an existence, Feng Manlu was not afraid at all. He still chose to stand behind his disciple. How bold and courageous was that? What an admirable pair of master and disciple. Most of the surrounding 400,000 to 500,000 martial artists were moved and sighed in their hearts. Yi Guchen had a complicated look on his face. He recalled that during the exchange, Feng Manlu had also asked Yi Guchen to do whatever he wanted. He would take care of the rest. Now, Feng Manlu was still doing the same in the face of an overlord-class force. "Feng Chen." "No, master, thank you." Yi Guchen paused and cupped his hands solemnly at Feng Manlu. Previously, Feng Manlu and Yi Guchen were master and disciple in name. However, Yi Guchen had never addressed Feng Manlu as master. After all, he was the sword demon who had dominated the world. In this world, how many people were qualified to be addressed as master by him? At this moment, Feng Manlu had truly gained Yi Guchen's respect and had changed the way he addressed him as master. "Ha!" Feng Manlu chuckled but did not say anything. That pair of blind and empty eyes vaguely revealed a sense of gratification. Then I want to leave the sect too. Some disciples of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest could not help but speak up. Yi Guchen and Feng Manlu, the two core disciples of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest, had left the sect. What was the point of them staying? All of you, shut up. Yan Chang'e shouted coldly. Yi Guchen and Feng Manlu had left the sect because they did not want to implicate the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest. If they also left the sect, wouldn't they be letting down Yi Guchen's sacrifice? Manlu, then I? Yan Chang'e was about to speak but was interrupted by Feng Manlu. Chang'e, the thousands of disciples of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest still need your leadership. Let us face them alone. Feng Manlu smiled faintly. Sigh. Yan Chang'e clenched his fists tightly. He still had the responsibility of settling the thousands of disciples of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest. He could not act recklessly. Is it really impossible? Yi Guchen, Uncle Feng? Yan Wushuang's delicate body swayed and her face turned pale. The two most important people to her had left the sect. She did not know what would happen next. A disciple of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest knelt on the ground with red eyes and cupped his hands. Farewell, Sword King of the Sword Sect. The words were filled with affection. This was the last greeting to Yi Guchen and Feng Manlu. Farewell, Sword King of the Sword Sect. The other disciples knelt down and cupped their hands. Farewell, Sword King of the Sword Sect. Chu Qingqi knelt down. Yi Xie knelt down. Ji Ling knelt down. Even Qing He, Gu Tu'a, and the other elders bowed and cupped their hands. Farewell, Sword King of the Sword Sect. These elders and disciples that Yi Guchen was extremely familiar with knelt down one by one and respectfully sent the master and disciple duo off. This also meant that Yi Guchen and Feng Manlu had officially left the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest. The hundreds of thousands of spectators were all moved. Some women even shed tears. How many sects had this kind of friendship? Just as everyone was immersed in this emotion, an ear-piercing and discordant voice sounded. TSKSK, what a touching master and disciple relationship. But so what? Yi Guchen, are you ready to die? Zhou Heng sneered. Yi Guchen's previous words had completely offended him. Come use your full strength. Otherwise, you'll be miserable. Yi Guchen restrained his emotions and pointed his Xianming heavy sword at the ground. As long as he defeated Zhou Heng, Song Yuyao would definitely not stand by and watch. At that time, a cold glint flashed across Yi Guchen's eyes. Humph, one move is enough to kill you. Zhou Heng sneered when he saw this. Although Song Yuyao was already Gu Xiaoyang's woman, no man would not like to show off his strength in front of a woman. Zhou Heng was the same. He wanted Song Yuyao to know that he was not inferior to Gu Xiaoyang. Genesis Star Fist. Zhou Heng punched out, accompanied by the phenomenon of stars exploding. It was as if the stars in the sky had appeared to support the power of his punch. God-slaying sword art Yama? Yi Guchen's eyes were cold, and his battle intent was boiling. He and the Starry Sword Pavilion were destined to have a death feud. And now, he had left the sect and was alone. Since that was the case, what was there to be afraid of? He would fight with all his might. Kill! Boom! The battle erupted again. This battle was between the Starry Sword Pavilion's genius and Yi Guchen. Chapter 761. It was the battle between Zhou Heng and Yi Guchen. In the eyes of the spectators, it was an unfair battle. The difference in their backgrounds was too great. Zhou Heng was one of the 7 great bears of the Starry Sword Pavilion, an overlord force. Even though Zhou Heng was the weakest of the 7 great bears, his cultivation, experience, ability, and methods were far superior to those of the other dynasties. Yi Guchen, on the other hand, was from a low-level dynasty. The difference in their backgrounds was like the difference between heaven and earth. There was no comparison at all. Therefore, even though the spectators sympathized with Yi Guchen, they felt pity for him. However, they still did not think that Yi Guchen could turn the tables and defeat Zhou Heng. Rumble! A great battle broke out at the top of the Forbidden City. Zhou Heng and Yi Guchen clashed. After one blow, the two of them retreated. Zhou Heng was a little surprised. He looked at Yi Guchen and said, "Baiming family swordsmanship. It seems that you have a little fortuitous encounter. However, if you think that you can challenge the Starry Sword Pavilion with this, you are too foolish." Zhou Heng punched out again. His fist shone brightly and was accompanied by a celestial phenomenon. The Yuanshan Astral Fist was a supreme-grade king-level fist technique of the Starry Sword Pavilion. Although the Starry Sword Pavilion mainly focused on the sword, they also had many martial arts techniques. They did not just focus on swordsmanship. Who is the foolish one? Yi Guchen's eyes glinted coldly. His feet flashed as he used the shadow step. His body left an afterimage as the Xianming heavy sword slashed through the air. Sword chi surged and turned into a string of hurricane lilies. God-slaying sword technique, Permitha. Zhou Heng's expression changed slightly. He did not dare to face the sword with his bare hands. With a flip of his wrist, a bright silver sword appeared in his hand. Alioth sword. Sush. The Alioth sword slashed out a bright silver sword light and collided with Yi Guchen's killer move. The sound of the collision was so loud that it broke everyone's eardrums. Zhou Heng's Alioth sword was made of metal from an ancient meteorite. Its quality was excellent and it had reached the pinnacle of supreme-grade mystical runes. The next step was the Heavenly Tribulation divine weapon. On the other hand, although he didn't know what material Yi Guchen's Xianming heavy sword was made of, its only characteristic was its toughness. In terms of toughness, even the blood prison sword from the Baiming family could not compare to it. After all, even the blood hell sword had been shattered. Clang, clang, clang. The two figures continued to crisscross as they engaged in close combat. What stunned everyone present was that Yi Guchen was actually able to exchange blows with Zhou Heng. This was simply inconceivable to everyone. How could this be? The pupils of the Xinghong crown prince with disheveled hair and bloodstains all over his body were opened wide, and he was filled with disbelief. It was one thing for Yi Guchen to defeat him, but now he was actually able to contend with the 7 great bears of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion. Could it be that today, Yi Guchen, you can really create a miracle? If that's the case, I might really fall for you. Princess Phoenix Dawn was also surprised. The reason why she was so fond of Yi Guchen was because she wanted to take revenge on Yan Wushuang. But the more she understood, the more shocked she was by Yi Guchen's performance. It was rare to see such an outstanding man. You do have some tricks up your sleeve, but if that's all, then you'll lose. Zhou Heng frowned. He didn't want to drag this out for too long. After all, as a sky pride of an overlord force, it wouldn't be good for him to fight with a sky pride of a low-ranked dynasty for so long. Starry Universe Sword. Zhou Heng finally executed the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion's sword technique. As one of the 4 sword pavilions, the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion's sword technique was naturally exquisite. Zhou Heng's feet moved as if he was stepping on the stars. He took 7 steps and created 7 afterimages. At the same time, he struck out 7 times with his sword. In an instant, the 7 swords merged into one and turned into a dazzling sword ray that slashed down at Yi Guchen's head. Yi Guchen's eyes flashed as he poured his true energy into the Xianming heavy sword and swung it up. Immortal murdering sword technique, immortal fall. Sword chi gushed out and swept out in all directions. Countless terrifying phantoms of fallen immortals appeared. Boom! When the 2 ultimate moves collided, Yi Guchen felt an extremely vigorous power of the stars passing through the sword and into his body. Yi Guchen activated his sea of vital energy, and golden true energy surged out and destroyed the power of the stars. On the other side, Zhou Heng also took a few steps back. His expression changed completely. Although Zhou Heng didn't use his full strength, the Starry Universe sword technique wasn't something an ordinary sky pride could withstand. This brat is a little strange, Zhou Heng thought. At this moment, Yi Guchen charged forward once again. His eyes were swallowed by the color of blood. A terrifying murderous aura gushed out from his body, as if it could slash the heavens and destroy the earth. Azura Sword Dao. This is Sword Dao? Zhou Heng's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't watched the battle before, so he naturally didn't know Yi Guchen's moves. He actually comprehended the sword principle? Even Song Yuyao's jade-like face revealed surprise once again. Some sky prides from other dynasties might be able to comprehend sword Dao. However, comprehending sword Dao was not something an ordinary sword cultivator could do. Even Song Yuyao and Zhou Heng hadn't comprehended sword Dao yet. Even Gu Xiaoyang had only comprehended the starry sword Dao recently. This person can't be left alive. Song Yuyao's eyes flashed coldly. Yi Guchen, who had been like an ant in her eyes, now gave her a sense of danger. So what? Formless sword Dao. When Zhou Heng saw this, he snorted coldly, but there was a trace of seriousness in his eyes. Even though Yi Guchen was still inferior in his eyes, the fact that he could comprehend sword Dao meant that Yi Guchen wasn't an ordinary sky pride. Therefore, Zhou Heng also displayed his sword Dao. Formless sword Dao? Yi Guchen's eyes were indifferent. Formless sword Dao was only an ordinary sword Dao. It was not bad among ordinary sword Daos, but it obviously couldn't compare to the supreme sword Dao. Not to mention the supreme sword Dao of Azura. 18 levels of Azura Blood Sea. Yi Guchen activated his sword domain, and the blood-red sword radiance spread out like an endless blood tide. The 18 levels of blood prison broke free and rushed toward Zhou Heng. Formless and formless, traceless and boundless, without a shadow or trace, Zhou Heng moved, and his body seemed to turn into a gust of wind, unpredictable. At the same time, he held the Alioth sword, and the sword momentum became erratic. However, in this fleeting movement, there was an extremely sharp sword intent hidden. This was the formless sword Dao. It was formless and unpredictable, and it seized the opportunity to deliver a fatal blow. The unpredictable sword Qi broke through the blood tide. At a certain moment, Zhou Heng suddenly exploded, and the true Qi of the 9th stage spirit bridge of heaven and earth surged out and poured into the Alioth sword. An extremely sharp and dazzling sword Qi, which seemed to be able to cut through the air, stabbed toward Yi Guchen from behind. "I'll kill you in one move." Zhou Heng smirked. However, Yi Guchen seemed to have expected this. He raised his heavy sword, and with the help of the Azura sword Dao, a terrifying sword Qi burst out. Lifefall. Yi Guchen twisted his body and slashed out with his heavy sword, colliding with Zhou Heng's ultimate move. In an instant, heaven and earth shook, and the sword radiance illuminated the 9 heavens. Chapter 762. Boom. At the top of the Forbidden City, countless sword Qi exploded in the void, spreading out along with the violent sword essence. Under everyone's shocked gaze, a figure flew out. It was Zhou Heng. How is this possible? Crown Prince Xinghong, Zi Donglai, Gong Mingba, and the others from before, such as Vermilion Bird Jade, Yuenin Yuwenji, and the others, their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Who would have thought that the one to be forced back was the Starry Sword Pavilion's prodigy? Zhou Heng took a dozen steps back, each step deep into the ground. With a spurt, Zhou Heng spat out a mouthful of blood. A set of silver armor appeared on his body. However, the chest area of the silver armor was covered in cracks that radiated outwards. If he hadn't used the silver armor at the last moment, Zhou Heng might have been seriously injured by Yi Guchen's sword. He stared at Yi Guchen with a sharp gaze. What kind of sword technique is that? Zhou Heng was shocked. If Yi Guchen had used the god-slaying sword and the deity-slaying sword, he could still accept it. However, the life-fall sword had thoroughly shocked Zhou Heng. Such a sword technique was unique even in the Starry Sword Pavilion. It was a core sword technique. This kid is special. Maybe we can capture him and force him to tell us the sword technique. In the sky, a venerable realm deacon of the Starry Sword Pavilion said. Song Yuyao looked at the battle below with a gloomy face. She said, "Zhou Heng, what are you waiting for? Suppress him." Zhou Heng's face turned ugly when he sensed Song Yuyao's impatience and disdain. He wanted to show off in front of Song Yuyao, but he ended up in such a sorry state. At the thought of this, Zhou Heng looked at Yi Guchen with an even colder gaze. "I was careless just now." Again. Zhou Heng's 9th stage spirit bridge of heaven and earth aura burst out. He soared into the sky and his vigorous genuine chi surged out, increasing his power by 9 times. His strength had reached the peak of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge, so he could instantly increase his combat strength by 9 times. Thousand Stars Pilgrimage Sword Technique. Zhou Heng finally used the Star Universe Sword Pavilion's Emperor-level sword art. Following his angry roar, the Alioth sword stabbed into the void. Streaks of sword light shone like stars. In the blink of an eye, Zhou Heng seemed to have stabbed thousands of times. The sword lights froze beside Zhou Heng, shining with deadly killing intent like stars. That's the Imperial-level sword technique of the Starry Sword Pavilion. Could it be that it wants to end the universe with a single strike? Around the forbidden Purple Mountain, 400 to 500,000 people stood and looked at the top of the mountain. Zhou Heng had even used his Emperor-level swordsmanship. It could be said that Zhou Heng wanted to decide the outcome of the battle with one strike. Kill! At a certain moment, Zhou Heng suddenly drew his sword. As he swung his sword, the sword lights around him seemed to have sensed something and followed his sword towards Yiguchen. His aura was extremely strong, and the sword light whistled. It was as if thousands of meteors were falling from the sky. It was said that when the Thousand Stars Pilgrimage Sword Technique was cultivated to the highest level, one could unleash thousands of swords in an instant. That kind of power was truly earth-shattering. It could instantly pierce a 10,000-foot-tall mountain into a sieve. Although Zhou Heng had not fully mastered the Thousand Stars Pilgrimage Sword Technique, its power was still shocking. Even the Xinghong Crown Prince would probably be severely injured if he took on this attack. Yiguchen's eyes also had a hint of seriousness in them. He would never underestimate any opponent, let alone the prodigies of the Starry Sword Pavilion. Yiguchen suddenly raised his hand. Golden True Sword Chi surged out and turned into a beautiful golden sword lotus. The power of the 108-leaf reincarnation sword lotus was much stronger than before. When it was thrown out, it collided with Zhou Heng's Emperor-level sword technique. Rumble! It was as if lightning had struck. In the void, countless sword chi collided and annihilated each other. The golden sword lotus exploded in an instant. Endless sword chi collided with the Thousand Stars Pilgrimage Sword Technique's sword lights. A series of explosions rang out as unparalleled sword chi rippled out. Yiguchen was forced back. Traces of blood seeped from the corner of his mouth. On the other hand, the silver armor on Zhou Heng's body had been completely shattered by the collision. He spat out another mouthful of blood. Both sides were injured in this collision. However, anyone with a discerning eye could see that Yiguchen actually had the upper hand. He even used an Emperor-level sword technique, but he still can't suppress Yiguchen? At this moment, the hearts of all the spectators trembled. It was as if thunder had exploded in their heads. Yiguchen could contend with a prodigy from an overlord faction. Even if Zhou Heng was the weakest of the 7 great bears, he was still far stronger than the prodigies from the top dynasties. However, those who had witnessed the sword duel of Saber weren't too surprised. After all, Gu Zun's strength was almost on par with a prodigy from an overlord faction. If Yiguchen could defeat Gu Zun, it wasn't too surprising that he could contend with Zhou Heng. If he unleashed his full strength, Zhou Heng might not be stronger than Gu Zun. Zhou Heng wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were cold like a storm. He didn't expect that he couldn't suppress Yiguchen even after using an Emperor-level sword technique. You can't even compare to junior brother Xiaoyang's finger. Song Yuyao cursed inwardly with an ugly expression. Zhou Heng was a disgrace to the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion. This can't go on. Zhou Heng's expression was cold. In his eyes, strange starlight began to surge and spread out like a tide. Zhou Heng is going to use his special ability. Seeing this scene, some martial artists cried out involuntarily. Only prodigies of 7th grade and above possessed special abilities. Every innate divine ability was unique and possessed great power. It's your honor to make me use my special ability. Now, prepare to die. Zhou Heng's killing intense sword. Yiguchen had humiliated him in front of Song Yuyao and the hundreds of thousands of spectators. Zhou Heng's only way to wash away his humiliation was to kill Yi Guqin. Boom! Starlight surged in Zhou Heng's eyes. This was his special ability, the magnetite starlight. It was as fast as light and extremely powerful. Swoosh! Swoosh! 2 deadly beams of magnetite starlight shot out from Zhou Heng's eyes and shot toward Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin reacted quickly and blocked with his Xianming broadsword. However, to Yi Guqin's surprise, the 2 beams of magnetite starlight turned and shot toward Yi Guqin from the side. Yi Guqin raised his eyebrows and moved to the side with rippling subtle steps. However, the beams of magnetite starlight still grazed Yi Guqin's waist, causing blood to spurt out. Yi Guqin, Su Jianshi, Yan Wushuang, and the others' hearts tightened. Yi Guqin frowned and ignored the pain. His powerful physical strength caused the wound to quickly heal. Next, Zhou Heng's eyes shone with divine light. Wherever he looked, starlight burst out and charged toward Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin could only dodge with rippling subtle steps. Sigh, what a pity. Yi Guqin was originally a grade 7 prodigy. If Gu Xiaoyang hadn't taken his innate sword core, he would have been able to suppress Zhou Heng. Some people shook their heads and sighed when they saw this. They were both grade 7 prodigies, so it was important to have an innate ability. Yi Guqin had the innate sword core, so Zhou Heng wouldn't be able to suppress him so easily with the magnetite starlight. Heh, now you've become a mouse that only knows how to hide. But do you think you can stall for time like this? Zhou Heng sneered and activated the magnetite starlight in his eyes again. The divine light of the magnetite star surged out in an instant, splitting into countless rays of light that filled the surroundings, as if forming a domain. Magnetite starlight, seal. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.